I bet you were expecting my next review to be the Timeless Children review, weren't you? Well, unfortunately you don't get to listen to me fucking suffer through that shit again yet. Because today, I'm re-reviewing Spyfall Part 1, and you're probably wondering why I'm doing that. First of all, I'm not that happy with the original review. My main issues are with the editing, which by the Series 12 standard reviews, because that one is definitely the weakest. My delivery wasn't really that good because it was my first attempt, and I didn't know the bullshit rules, so loads of the review that is currently up is missing. The quality is fucking dreadful, and the original video got fucking claimed anyway. So I just thought, fuck it, I don't want to rewatch Timeless yet anyway, so I'll just go fix this one. Hope you enjoyed this review, because I sure as shit didn't. We start off by seeing our first glimpse of this story's villain. Well, one of them anyway. And these ones are the Boneless. I mean, well, they're not the Boneless, but this whole dimension hopping seems like it was ripped right out of Flatline. Also, this intro is predictable as shit, and we don't even need these scenes. We should have just started at the title sequence, then cut to seeing our lovely companions again. Usually in a series when we are reuniting with characters that we already know, we get some establishing scenes of what their lives have been like without them. And then they reunite in this big old scene, and it's usually pretty good. So how do these scenes fare up? Very poorly. Ryan's is just him lying to his stupid friend. Yaz's is a clusterfuck of a fit sister wanting Ryan's number, implying some kind of crush between the two that is never brought up or mentioned again. Her dad being a stupid boomer and her mum nagging her. We're off to a great start. Then Graham's is just, hey guys, remember Grace died last series? However, admittedly when they pick up the doctor, Graham gets in a good line.
Boss, I'm waiting for my mates.
Your friends are inside the car.
Worst Uber ever!
Little did I know that this would be one of the very few episodes this series where Graham was likeable. However, that one quick glimmer of hope was then crushed by this shitty car scene. Totally not ripped off from the Sontaran stratagem, except in the Sontaran stratagem, it actually leads somewhere and has some impact on the story. Whereas here, it just feels like an absolute waste of time with the lamest excuse in the books. After that shite scene where we get possibly one of the worst moments from 13, right up there with ignoring Graham's worries about his cancer.
Don't be ridiculous, Franklin. I've read the files. The doctor is a man.
I've had an upgrade.
I fucking despise this shit, because not only is it irritating as fuck, not only is this blatantly sexist, but if the roles were reversed, everyone would fucking outrage. If I ever got my dream job of becoming the 14th Doctor and someone said, were you a woman in the past, and I went, nah, I've had an upgrade, I would get fucking cancelled! But most importantly, we all know that the 13th Doctor would be better if she got an actual upgrade to a Cyberboy. Then again, the Cybermen in the series are just laughably shit, so maybe not. You know what else is laughably shit? Telling us this girl has had her DNA rewritten and not showing us any evidence of how this conclusion was made. Come on, even the Lazarus experiment did this in a more interesting way. And it's the fucking Lazarus experiment! This scene is so irrelevant as well because they just instantly move on. It just seemed like they wanted that shot of Steven for the trailers and nothing else. Even the companions just don't give a shit about this fucking corpse in front of them. Remember that excellent scene in Oxygen where 12, Bill and Nardole find that corpse being forced to stand up because of the suit and Bill wants them to lie down, and you can see that it's actually making her uncomfortable just being in there with it? Or that fucking fantastic scene at the end of the Fires of Pompeii when Donna wants the Doctor to save some people's lives? If this happened in the Chibnall era, none of the companions would give a shit. God, I miss when companions felt like actual people. Even Clara in Series 7 felt like a person. She was just an unlikable person. Back to Spyfall Part 1, we get introduced to our gadgets of ridiculous nature, which I like. But then we just get this boring explanation of Lenny Henry. I mean, wasted talent number 456's company. Prepare for a lot of complaints of boring explaining because that's the majority of this shit episode. Also, we get confirmation from the Doctor that UNIT is still shut down and Torchwood is gone. What the fuck? I'm not gonna act as if I know anything about Big Finish because I haven't even listened to it, and I don't really have plans to. But I highly doubt it ended its series by destroying Torchwood. How fucking stupid would that be? And let's just say Big Finish isn't canon. It isn't. Surely Torchwood has been rebuilt, and even if it hasn't, what the fuck has Jack been doing the entire time then? Has he just been going around in space for the last 10 years? Knowing Chibnall, the thing is, we won't even get an explanation of how he got there. And before I go back to Spyfall, let's just think, because I never thought of this until someone pointed it out to us. How the fuck does Jack know about the lone Cyberman? They didn't explain how the Master came back. I highly doubt they're gonna explain how Jack came back and where this is in his timeline and what the fuck has he been doing. After destroying my hopes and dreams of Torchwood returning, we get more cringe from 13.
Kisses. It's quite French, that, isn't it? Kisses.
Just think that someone actually wrote this and considered it good. Then, after that joke, Stephen Fry kills himself and adds himself onto the list of wasted talent. I seriously can't believe that they got Stephen Fry into Doctor Who and then gave him a role this minimal. And they didn't even reference, like, River Song or anything, like... Oh, this show's so fucking incompetently made now, my god.
Kick out the facts.
Oh, so many times I married the diamond.
So you're saying
Elizabeth I.
Ramon,
Marilyn Monroe.
Stephen Fry,
Cleopatra.
same thing.
Then the shameless boneless come out of the walls and we see the upgraded TARDIS. This is a massive improvement from the shit we got in Series 11, and they really make the TARDIS seem more pleasing this series. The Doctor then proves her bias to women as she ignores Graham twice and immediately acknowledges the threat when Yaz says it. Obviously, this is subtle targeting from Chris Chibnall telling us that men are bad and women are good. And he is just subtly trying to undermine men and belittle them, despite being one himself. Either that or it's just a shit scene, you be the judge. And then we actually see the fam split up. And this was a really good idea. We could finally get some character from Ryan and or Yaz. Unfortunately, we get what happens a lot this series, and that's trying to make Ryan funny. Unfortunately, Ryan is the most boring flat cardboard to ever exist. So even if you give him funny lines, they never work because of the delivery. And the scenes with Lenny just feel a bit pointless, and just felt like an excuse to get Ryan and Yaz to his house. All they really do is establish that 7% of him isn't human. However, like with that dead bitch in the beginning, they only tell us, never show us. And the scenes with 13 and Graham, while less stuffy, are still just a bit shit. Sacha performs O in the most boring, flat and empty way possible, making him just seem like another Chibs tag-along. This fails in comparison to the other Master reveals because even before the Doctor knew who they were interesting people. Professor Yana was a scientist trying to save all humanity from the end of time itself, and he was a likeable and charismatic person and also extremely well performed. Missy was shown throughout all of Series 8, and even before the Doctor knows who she is, she's an interesting character and we get the sense that there's something not quite right with her, making the reveal all the more impactful. The reveal of the Sim Master is one of the best scenes in the show's history. We get built up about this mystery of this random creepy fuck who's been manipulating Bill for 10 years, and then it leads to the reveal that it is John fucking Sim. Fucking yes! The reveal of Sacha being the Master plays it off as if it's as clever as these other scenes, when it really isn't. The only hint we get at his identity is that he says the word Master. Fucking hell, what a twist! I'll make sure in the future when I watch a series of Doctor Who, whenever someone says the word Master, in any context, I'll know. That's the Master. With John Sim's reveals, there's not that much building up to it until he gets the scene with Missy, and the dialogue in that scene is fucking geniusly written. You get all these hints. He says, "You don't remember me, do you? You don't remember being before, do you?" Every single other line spoken from this John Sim in disguise gives you more and more and more and more until the climax of...
Of course, they are rather necessary when you happen to be someone's former prime minister. Hello, Missy. I'm the Master. I'm very worried about my future. Give us a kiss.
I'll talk more about Sacha's terrible reveal later. While the villains look cool being completely white, I feel they looked a lot scarier from just taking the environment before. At this point, I just wish there were the boneless instead of these things. Also, the scariness level drops even further the second they talk. The boneless were scarier because they were more visually interesting and they didn't say a word throughout the whole episode. Also, a quick nitpick / suggestion for the scene where Yaz and Ryan are almost discovered. Don't you think it would be funny if they started standing up as Barton said show yourself, and then when the poor man's boneless show up they quickly get back down? Then again, I'm asking for comedy in the Chibnall era, I don't know what I was expecting. The scene after that is so fucking dumb as well. Like 1 second after Barton leaves, Yaz screams, Ryan shouts and almost shows some emotion, but apparently in this supposedly empty building, Barton didn't hear a thing. Wah, wah. The green place where she was teleported was kind of visually appealing, but Mandip's acting lets this scene down. And her talking to herself is so unsubtle. It's like Chips is saying to us, look guys, Yaz is scared! Like, come on, we could guess that from her acting, you fucking moron. These scenes would be so much more impactful if they were dead silent with no shitty music and dialogue. After an actually decent scene between Ryan and Yaz, which I do quite like, we get another scene with O that I don't like. It's just more boring exposition. Seriously, these scenes are so dialogue heavy and not very interesting dialogue. Generic dialogue. You could put this dialogue in any shitty or generic spy story and it would fit right in. After one of the most overdramatic reactions to the TARDIS I've seen in my life, we get more trailer bait scenes. With, for once, actually decent music. Congrats Segan, you've made one good track. But even then, it feels completely out of place because it's just a shot of walking, and not an impactful shot of walking like in the RTD era or the Moffat era. Oh my god, I miss Murray Gould so much, man, you don't understand. Murray Gould could give some irrelevant pieces of shit like The Future Kind some fantastic music, and Segan can't even give the fucking master good music. Back to Spyfall Part 1, and the scenes here are fucking shit. Despite supposedly blending in, they all do a terrible job and act like fucking morons. The only one who does anything of note is the Doctor confronting Barton when he's alone at his own birthday party. As you do. And this scene ends terribly. It basically just ends with the Doctor being threatened by Barton, making it look like she loses completely. Could you actually imagine the four gods being threatened by anyone? Hell, they are usually the one given threats.
No. I said no.
What is the meaning of this negative?
It means no. I'm gonna rescue her. I'm gonna save Rose Tyler from the middle of the Dalek fleet, and then I'm gonna save the Earth, and then, just to finish off, I'm gonna wipe every last stinking Dalek out of the sky!
God, I miss Chris. Then after that we get another shitty scene on these bikes which look fucking dreadful. Also, the spy music is at least played appropriately here, but this scene is so fucking bad. It just feels like even more filler to an already long episode. Seriously, for a story this long, there's so many scenes of irrelevant bullshit. You can tell that Chibnall wanted to make Spyfall Part 2 be the first episode of the series, but didn't have the balls for it, so you had this to attempt to ease in the viewers, even though this episode is completely irrelevant filler. Also, bullshit could Barton not hit at least one of these twats. Honestly, bikes were better utilised in the Bells of St. John than this. And the Bells of St. John absolutely fucking sucks, but at least they have a purpose. Well, you wanna know what these bikes were used for? Filler and trailer bait. Again! And then we are bombarded with so much shit, it's fucking... Oh. So first, they all chase the plane to get on it. This is fine. But how fucking unfit is this master if he's getting outran by bradders? Barton casually flies his own private jet, as a billionaire does. And then we get the scene that absolutely kills this episode. For some reason, in O's files it says that he's a champion sprinter. Absolutely useless bit of information for a fired spy. But this stupid detail is the one that catches out the Master. For God's sake! And this is where Sacha's performance goes from boring to fucking insufferable. These less than 5 minutes are absolutely fucking atrocious to sit through. I've explained earlier why this reveal playing itself as being clever is fucking stupid. But this scene is so fucking self-righteous in thinking it made this smart decision, it pisses me off to no end. Also, Jodie's surprised acting in this scene is fucking dreadful.
Yeah, but it's not a watch, it's this chameleon thing.
No. It's this thing, this device. It rewrites biology. Changes a Time Lord into a human.
And it's the same watch.
Can't be. What did he say, Mother? What did he say?
He looked at the watch like he could hardly see it, like that perception filter thing.
What about now? Can you see it now? Let me in! Let me in!
She's dead.
I broke the lock. Give me a hand.
I'm begging you, everything's changed! It's only the two of us, we're the only ones left! Just let me in!
The Master? Now could I?
Oh.
Doctor.
He can't be.
No, I can't.
Also, despite finding out he's a danger, not one of the fam tried to restrain him. And don't try to argue that none of the fam could restrain this 5'7" skinny rat. Ryan fucking towers over him and is clearly well built. They even get a cringy joke about how well built he is in Praxeus.
Ooh. You work out?
I do a lot of running.
Even Yaz or Graham could have done something, but they do jack shit! I guess if they saw John Sim run past them in Last of the Time Lords, they would just let him go. Also, the Master apparently took O's identity. No explanation is given on how he did this. Also, he used tissue compression! Remember tissue compression! God, I'd never think something in Classic Who is actually done worse in New Who. In The Deadly Assassin, we see tissue compression done to much more of an effect, because everyone seems to shake around it. And it isn't tried to be made into a stupid quirky joke by the worst Master to ever disgrace the screen!
Lots of fun.
How is this even real? Also, there's a bomb in the cockpit for some reason. Listen, I stopped giving a shit the second the worst performance I'd seen in my life started.
Do you really think that I would not make that sonic cruise, Doctor? Come on!
How the fuck? What the fuck? Who hired you? Then, after more cringe, he gives us the cock tease line, then no clips away. Then the episode ends. What an absolute fucking shit show. So that was Ballfall Part 1, and my god, this is so much worse than I remember. There is so much stupid shit in this episode. There is so much filler in this episode. God, it's such an absolute fucking bore. There is absolutely nothing I would ever want to rewatch in this episode. And the new Master is fucking terrible. Hyperactive John Simclin that makes me want to die. There's so much boring fucking exposition in this episode, it makes it a chore to sit through. The whole time I was watching this episode, I was just thinking of all the other things I'd rather be doing. Like sleeping. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, please help. The jokes in this episode are fucking dreadful. And the second they arrive at Lenny, shit completely hits the fan. It goes from an absolute bore to an absolute mess instantly. This is the worst series opener in the revival. But it was merely the calm before the storm of this dreadful series. Up next... Today marks a very important day for this channel and me in general as a creator. This is the first time ever I've ever had to do this, and I hope I never have to do it again. I'm going to have to remake this entire video after fully completing it already. Why? The fucking BBC. If you follow my Instagram, you would know that I had completed this review ages ago, like on the 10th of February, but because of the BBC's bullshit rules on Series 11 and 12, I've had to entirely redo it, because they just kept blocking it. With Spyfall Part 1, they were like, okay, 12 seconds of footage, that's fine without being blocked. But then for this one, I uploaded it just using 10 seconds, and they were like, no, not having it. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever, I'll trim all the shots down so it's like less than 10 seconds. Less than 12 seconds, sorry. And now it was less than 12 seconds, they're like, no, it has to be less than 10 seconds. And I'm sitting there like, fine, whatever, it's bullshit, but I'll go at your rules because I really enjoyed this video. And then they're like, actually it has to be 9 seconds. And then I'm sitting there like, oh my fucking god, kill me. Because the video started off as like 13 minutes long, but I cut out that much, it was like under 11, and I was fucking livid. And after I finally did that, they're like, okay, no, 8 seconds. 8 seconds. If you use more than 8 seconds, we are copyrighting that shit instantly and blocking it. And I was like, oh my fucking god, I am sick of this bullshit. So I filed a dispute. They get back to me at the 12th of March, ridiculously long time for them to just say fucking no anyway. And because I actually really want to review Series 12, because it's fucking finished, I have to redo this video entirely. I don't know if this is going to be better than the original one, because I really enjoyed that, like, my delivery was fucking on point throughout that whole thing. But you're going to have to expect a lot more cuts, and the reviews are going to take a lot more time, considering the safest way to do this is to cut every 5 seconds. Reviewing Series 12, and probably 11, is gonna take fucking years now. But anyway, all that whinging aside, let's start this shit.
Laser screwdriver. Who'd have Sonic? And the good thing is, he's not dead for long. I get to kill him again!
Part 2 begins with the Doctor waffling on for a bunch of time before she bumps into Ada Lovelace, one of history's MVPs in early computer programming. Something weird I thought they did for this 2-part was having both parts have different directors, making them a lot more unique, as Part 2 has a lot more close-ups that weren't seen in the first part. Suddenly, the two characters are yeeted into 1834 in a gallery of technology, which was surprising and interesting. The actors used for this convention are expressive enough to give it a cheesy carnival-like feel, like that episode of Torchwood from Out of the Rain. Unfortunately, the Doctor is the only one to not live up to these set expectations despite having the strangest appearance in the room. Continuing on an annoying path, the Master bursts in and upstages the Doctor instantly when he decides to shrink people for some reason, I don't know why. And this angry shouting Master is just so bad, and the whole scene just gets derailed because of his poor entrance.
Chloe, you love.
Master.
Friendly reminder that some people are genuinely arguing this is the best Master a day. Fuck off! This Master is a lot like Jodie in the sense that she's trying her best to be Tennant because he's the safest Doctor a copy, and Satya is trying his best to be Sim because he's the safest Master a copy. Meanwhile, in Back to the Future, the companions get rescued by the Doctor from the future, where they end up back in the UK spying on Barton. This scene just looks so shit though, because they are incredibly close to Barton, basically shouting at each other, but he doesn't even hear them. The phone scene was really shit as well. What, so everyone could just suddenly see them? To escape from the people, the fan decide to hide in an unfinished house, and Graham is just able to break the padlock. Kinda just ignored. And then they just sit there and talk about nothing. So this is just even more filler. And this scene just shows the wasted potential of Graham. We could have explored Graham's loneliness, make him much more of an interesting companion, instead of just the funny, quirky old man. Don't get me wrong, Graham is the least offensive person in the TARDIS currently, but that doesn't mean he's good. This is showed the best when he uses the laser shoes. I honestly thought he was taking the piss in part 1 when he said that. But admittedly, it is hilarious seeing him tap around like a numpty. But it's the only purpose he serves in these episodes, is just to shoot things and intimidate people for comedy. Back to the Doctor, she's in World War II now, and I'm just gonna say it, the time hopping thing was actually really fun, and it was a nice contrast to part 1. I thought it was also unintentionally hilarious having the Master dressed up as a Nazi, as not only does he stick out like a sore thumb, he looks ridiculous. And let's just ignore the fact that he got shot and blew up in the previous scene. Anyone else getting Rise of Skywalker vibes? Just me? Hope so. That film was fucking awful, wasn't it? Then we get this really bad scene where Barton kills his mother. This is quite the diversion from the story, and yet I'm still curious, because this could have been really interesting. It's a quite unique position. This bitter child growing up knowing that his own mother would never be happy with him. It's the only real bit of development Barton gets. I reckon if they didn't force the Master in this story, Barton would have been a much better villain. Later on, the fam find the mother's corpse, which just kind of ruined the whole scenario, and the fam state the obvious again. Back in World War II, the Doctor and this bitch are hidden under the floorboards, and this scene is just bizarre. After the floorboards get shot up, the Master doesn't even check to see if the Doctor's dead. What was even the point? It's an absolute miracle neither of them got shot. Then the Doctor explains to the dumb audience who know what Khan is. It's so obvious they just need the excuse to have the first 3 female something in a room at the same time. But what purpose does this actually serve overall? They're pretty useless to the plot. This detour feels so disconnected from the whole point of the Doctor being dragged onto this adventure anyway. The only interesting part of the scene was when Ada saw Paris burning down, but this still felt underwhelming, especially when you think of an episode like Vincent and the Doctor. Don't get me wrong, I still think this story is very, very overrated, but it's undeniable that that episode did a much better job of the exact opposite thing. Also, the acting is much better there. And then, the FAM! Mope around in a countryside. No, not this countryside, because that would actually be interesting. Just some random countryside. Where they slept is another one of those details that is just completely ignored. And not to mention, but this scene is just so bad. Nothing wrong with the laser shoes, they are fucking hilarious. But this basically means the only example of Vor's power is that they can materialize random people in random locations. But it was all part of the fam's plan anyway? That doesn't excuse this awful script. This RTD era pandering is painful. I know Sacha is just a poor rip-off of Sim, but don't bring down this man's legacy with the likes of you, the worst on-screen Master in all of New Who. And then, by means that aren't explained, the Doctor and the Master just suddenly on top of the Eiffel Tower! There's just so much wrong with this! The most stunning thing of all is that the Doctor has just left Ada, someone who's out of their time period, on their own! In a house that literally just got shot up. I thought this useless tag-along could have at least upped the stakes, but nope! And as for the conversation with these two, fuck me. He explains away that he was able to become a Nazi with somebody learned in school. Go figures. And this scene just felt like it went on and on and on because of the awful editing between the past and the present that goes on throughout. Even with all the answers laid out, I still don't know what the Master's plan was. Was he just trying to get the Doctor to listen? Just to tease the idea that the Time Lords aren't good? For fuck's sake! This Master has now disrespected the best Master by shamelessly ripping him off, disrespects Missy's entire arc by his mere existence, and now he's disrespected the best story ever conceived. Holy fucking shit! I'm so done! This was over 10 years ago! Rassilon, played by Timothy Dalton, who ironically played James Bond, was practically a villain in that story. So it just feels like what I just spent almost 3/4 of an hour watching was a complete waste of time. Because Gallifrey is gone. Again! But I'm gonna stop complaining now and show you the funniest scene in this entire show.
Finish what you were saying!
What have you done?
When I saw this, I laughed and then immediately cried because it just shows Sacha doesn't know what he's doing. Let's just compare some scenes. Here is the best Master assaulting someone.
Isomorphic controls. Which means they only work for me.
Here's Missy doing the exact same thing. Fucking hell, here's even some classic Who, just to play it different for once.
Now at last, I have the power to destroy you.
Now here's Sacha. This scene is so laughably bad, it's embarrassing. My immersion broke further when I saw the awfully CGI TARDIS shack in the middle of Paris. Back in the present day, Barton makes a speech somewhere and the lighting in the scene is just so bad. And yes, data collection is a modern day issue, but it's so obviously just a technology bad moment. It just comes off as dull. Sending a text to all of humanity, you're taking the piss, right? Who would honestly take that threat seriously? The most annoying thing of all is that Lenny Henry's performance isn't actually bad. The script's fucking him over. In his Doctor Who sketch from the 80s, he's literally making fun of this show for taking itself too seriously. And now he's given an ultra serious speech. I'm wondering whether I should even make this show serious. I meant to say take, but let's roll with it. Then everyone starts getting upgraded and my laughter just arrived again. Just look at this! The Master then turns up out of nowhere, claiming he just survived the 20th century just to yell at them. Quick note, this isn't in the script, but I know there's now a book explaining what he did in the 20th century, but still, that's not good enough. Again, the journey's just irrelevant. He just needs to be at the right place at the right time so the Doctor can blabber on at him about how smart she is. We get more elaborate plan, bollocks explaining from the Master, and it's all reversed in seconds. Because the Doctor had the Master's TARDIS. Annoyingly as well, they don't show the women coming out the TARDIS, so it just looks like they came from the fucking heavens or something. And it just looks like they ran back into nowhere just to resolve the plane plot hole. Honestly, the whole plan doesn't even make sense, and it's not worth my time or your time explaining why it's retarded. So let's just skip to the next scene, which is a montage of the Doctor solving the whole plane problem, which was a surprise to see. As knowing 13's love for blabbering on, I thought she'd just explain it away. But there's no challenge here, as everything the Doctor needs is just in the TARDIS. She then wipes the minds of her new friends, and Nose wasn't bad. She said good luck in French and it was a nice little scene. However, with Ada, the Doctor just goes on about this whole bunch of nothing before leaving and kissing her like a freak. Then she goes to Gallifrey to see what the Master was talking about. I'm gonna ignore the fact that Gallifrey was saved and supposed to be lost. And it took 4.5 billion years just to get there. But the scene itself is a great display of visual effects, and the TARDIS arriving on Gallifrey and the shot of destruction. And the close-up of Jodie's face, all of it was fantastic. And, oh my god, we actually have a good scene between the Doctor and the Master. Haven't seen one of these in fucking years. And the Timeless Children thing could be really interesting. I hope it isn't just forgotten again. That was in the old script that was written on the 7th of February. The finale is out now and I fucking despise it. So, in conclusion, is Spyfall Part 2 as good as I remember it? Dear God, no! Don't get me wrong, there's some great moments in this, and Graham was great as usual. The time hopping was kind of fun if you switch your brain off. And that ending was just fucking fantastic, but the rest of it sucks! There's just so many scenes in this story that are just bad, and the new Master is terrible! When going into this review, I was still pretty mixed on him, but I was more so on the bad side, but now I can't stand him. And now that I'm redoing this after the finale, he doesn't improve either. He's shit! This episode is honestly just bad, and it's just not as fun in a rewatch. But it's nowhere near as bad as what came next week. Orphan 55 quickly became one of the most universally hated episodes in all of Doctor Who, with fans lampooning it for its bad acting, annoying characters and bad cinematography, and awful writing. And aliens that were clearly ripped right out of Love and Monsters. Orphan 55 was seen as the worst episode in the revival, straight after release, and one of the most disappointing for sure. And the writer for this episode was Ed Heim, someone who people had hope in for some reason. And knowing he's coming back next series is just... oh, fuck me, Chibnall, why? But, do I agree with all of the criticism that Orphan 55 gets? Maybe Orphan 55 was a hidden gem overlooked by many fans and it's secretly brilliant. As if! Let's start this shit show. This episode has one of the most abrupt starts I've ever seen. Less than 5 minutes in, we're already thrown in a scenario we know enough about, and we're introduced to this furry character who's introduced with a joke extremely similar to Series 1's Bad Wolf.
I wouldn't get in the way.
I wouldn't mind if you did. Not a bad idea, Linda Weatherwire.
And party of 4? Van Dozy Harold coupons. I'm hyphen with a 3.
But seriously, who fucking designed this character? She looks terrible! Oh, and just another note to add, for the first time in the entire Chibnall era, Graham is really annoying.
I'm gonna get up, sit somewhere else, then contact the all-inclusive doc. Gotta get your coupons worth, get in!
I didn't think it was possible to make the most likeable person in the TARDIS right now annoying. And when I say most likeable, I mean the only likeable one. But somehow Edward Heim has found a way to make Bradley Walsh annoying. When I said earlier we were thrown in a scenario we barely know anything about, I really wasn't being hyperbolic. Not even 3 minutes into this shit, the danger starts within the security room. You need to at least establish what normal life is like in this place before building a threat, and let us explore a bit first. And this is coming from someone with an extremely shoddy attention span. Seriously, I get distracted by every single tiny thing, but I can manage to keep my attention through on Doctor Who. Unless this episode was directly made for stupid children, we don't need a hook this early. Sometimes in Classic Who, you don't even get a hook until the end of the first part of an episode, which could be about 25 minutes. So why the beginning of this episode is so rushed is a mystery to me. The rip-off hikes are getting into the facility and Ryan gets the coronavirus in less than 5 fucking minutes. Ryan getting the corona was so poorly done as well, like, why is the virus visible? Does Ed Heim know what science is? And as someone who failed computing, I know that viruses aren't meant to be visible. And why didn't we see its effect on the teleport, and why can't the people just go through it anyway? It's not even stated whether the teleport was infected, or the people were infected. It's just said that it is infected and is taken as a fact. No explanation, no nothing. Then the Doctor begins harassing these boring characters with questions she'll never get the answer to. She asks the sort of questions that would arise in the viewer's head when they're watching the episodes, and the episodes themselves are supposed to answer them. The best episodes of Doctor Who are the ones where the Doctor has no clue what's going on or what something is. Take, for example, the greatest story of all time, The End of Time. In The End of Time Part 1, it is revealed that the knocking in the Master's head isn't just his insanity, and it is real, and neither of them know what it is. 2 Time Lords, some of the smartest beings ever, don't know what the noise is, and it makes the Master go further into insanity and relief, and it makes the Doctor more scared.
What? What is it? What's inside your head? It's real. It's real. It's real!
The problem with 13 is that she knows what's going on but constantly acts like she doesn't, never once being challenged about her beliefs. So compelling character moments will never exist, and we can say bye to brilliant moments like this.
Funny thing, Mr. Lux, I don't want to see everyone in this room dead because some idiot thinks his pride is more important.
Then why don't you sign his contract?
Ryan also is just unlikable and annoying in this episode. He straight up lies to this girl that he's just met, pretending he's a pilot or something. She firstly claims to be a hotel critic, and this in itself has potential to be funny, but then it turns out she's just as bad as Ryan, and instead she's just an unemployed blank slate whose mum is in charge of security. What? Yaz, as usual, was completely pointless in this episode, just like Graham. Like seriously, what did she even do? Apart from cockblock our boy Benny. Then we are introduced to James Buckley with green hair for some reason. This was one of the only things I was looking forward to in this episode because I knew that James was in the hit show The In-Betweeners, that I'd never seen at the time, but I'd heard it was funny. And after seeing the Orphan 55 trailer, I thought, okay, this looks shit, but at least it could be funny. But nope! This is a tragic miscast. He doesn't do anything. He's not memorable, he's not funny. Why does he have green hair? Before I continue this review, I've got to ask, why? Why would you get James Buckley into Doctor Who and give him nothing to do? Seriously, you get the funniest in-betweener and you give him no material to work with. And I know he's the funniest in-betweener because I watched that whole show in preparation for this review, just to make sure that my statement in this Spyfall Part 2 review would be accurate. And it was. Move over, Lenny Henry. James Buckley is now the biggest waste of talent in Doctor Who. Back to the episode, he starts off by talking to his awful child actor son, who it seems like he just met. And then the two of them just become tag-alongs. They don't do anything, they are just there. The monster design in this episode is one of the extremely few not awful things in this episode, even though they are a complete rip-off of the Hoik. But how they are used is the biggest problem. Every time we see them, they are shot almost every time separate from the characters. It creates such a dissever with the performances that it's hard to believe the creatures are even there. The Doctor then continues to alienate the audience by blabbering on about iconic membranes or some shit. I meant to just say ionic, but iconic sounded funny, so I kept it in. She's somehow figured out that certain types of DNA are approved and not approved for this giant shockwave she's gonna create. And she's basically gonna save the day in 13 minutes, so everything that has taken place up till now could have been expanded upon into a full-length episode. What the fuck? Also, a wave that can kill certain types of DNA but not others? Sounds awfully familiar to Part in Other Ways if I do say so myself. Which I do, because it's a complete rip-off. Also, they used the hacking excuse again for this whole thing. Sorry, didn't you just use this 2 weeks ago in Spyfall Part 1?
We were trying to bring you here, not kill you, but our systems got hacked.
This security officer called Kane packs all of the remaining survivors into a vehicle that looks like shit. I'd have thought just holding out of the hotel would be a much better idea for survival, but nope! Let's just drag random people into a dreg swamp instead. It fucking makes a whole lot of sense to me. The car then gets stopped by a dreg trap. I'm not even gonna question it. Which means they then all run out of the vehicle, just to get back into it. How is the tension meant to be kept up if all the decisions are so retarded? That would be like if in the end of time where the Doctor goes to save Wilf, if he just broke the machine and let all the radiation flood out instead of absorbing it and saving the world. And on the topic of stupid, the character of Vilma, who constantly shouts "Benny!" throughout this episode. And despite her very short on-screen time, she probably has the most lasting impact. Because she is so fucking annoying. Oh, and to be precise, she says the word Benny 18 times in this episode.
Son!
On the topic of Benny, he's talking to Vilma from outside and I genuinely don't know what's supposed to be happening here. Is he just being held by a dreg, like next to the vehicle so he can talk to her? I don't see why the dregs are so generous. The escape from the vehicle is terrible as well. It starts off with the hoiks, I mean dreg, ripping off the roof. And then everybody yeets out of the car except for the furry, which I don't know how none of them notice. When the Doctor gets out of the vehicle, she runs to meet with everyone else and the fat fuck is still inside? What the fuck was she doing in there for so long? Oh, and then they just cut to this abysmal shot of the monster, like, it's so shit, look at it! The whole thing becomes an even bigger joke when they all go underground. Kane admits to killing Benny and then everyone's reactions are so absurdly stupid, it's unfathomable. Benny literally asks to be killed, but everyone has a go at Kane for it.
What was the other one?
If anyone can, will they please shoot me?
Don't worry, I killed him.
Oh, what did she just say? What, Benny?
What is wrong with you?
Like, what the fuck is even happening in this episode? That's like if in the Satan Pit, when Zack kills Mr. Jefferson, everyone started giving Zack shit for it, despite the fact that Mr. Jefferson asked to be killed. But instead, in the Satan Pit, everyone was quiet and respectful to honour Mr. Jefferson. Since, let's be real, even Mr. Jefferson says it, it's nicer to be killed by lack of oxygen than death by ood, or in this case, death by dreg. And the attempt of a twist that Bella is Kane's daughter is so terrible. They are so obviously not related that it becomes painful to watch them act as if they are. The only thing they have in common is their extreme love for violence. Then we get another fantastic twist when it's revealed to us we've been on Earth the whole time. This could have been done in such a more interesting way, and it's okay that the sign's in Russian because the TARDIS isn't here. But wait. Doesn't that mean that everyone else here, including the furry and the Jacksepticeye clones, all speak English? Bit odd, but at this point I can't even be asked to whine about it. Everyone then arrives back at the hotel, which... what was even the point of going out there? Then we get more exposition on how the Earth became Orphan 55. It just wasn't necessary. The message of this episode boiled down is that we should feel bad and regret for all the damage we've done to the planet. As if we aren't doing our fucking best to try and help that right now. And while this is happening, our protagonists are pushing a vent into a wall. And after that, so much shit, so much fucking shit is flung into our faces, I might as well just shove my face down a toilet. The oxygen can beat the dregs. Shit, Yaz just ranks a random cable from the wall and it just happens to stun the dregs. Shit. This random dreg is meant to be the alpha, but it looks exactly the same as the other ones. Shit. Oh, and not to mention the scene where the Doctor just gets a dreg into a cage. And now everything just blows up for completely inconspicuous reasons, and it's still not over. Cancer's back to kill the dreg, and the random insane woman snogs Ryan, and even if you were hoping to see some good action, we just get teleported back to the TARDIS. What? The Doctor doesn't even attempt to go back and save the people that just saved their lives. They just get ditched. And in the brilliant Praxeus, we see that the Doctor can clearly still do that, making this moment so much worse. And this just makes Adric's death in Earthshock all the less impactful, but that's Praxeus. We'll get to that when we unfortunately get to that. Then we get the Doctor giving a speech which is just so goddamn preachy and cringe, and it shits on everything this show has been setting up for the last 15 years. It is very clearly established in many episodes of the revival that time is fixed. You can't just change the future, and when you try to do things like this, things go to shit considerably. You can only change things very slightly. You can't change something as absolutely massive as this. And this can't be an alternative universe, as it's clearly shown in the Series 2 Cyberman 2-parter that time travel between parallel worlds is impossible. And I highly doubt, well, I don't highly doubt, I know that the walls of reality aren't falling down. But considering the timeless children, you'd think they'd be able to set something up like this, but guess not. Rest in peace, the fourth great and bountiful human empire. Has Chibnall hired writers who've actually seen this fucking show before? In conclusion, Orphan 55 not only fucking sucks, but it is genuinely one of the worst episodes in the show's history. The characters, acting, direction, editing, cinematography, and most importantly, the writing for this episode all fucking sucks. Seriously, how did you even get this bad? And to think, this isn't even the worst episode of Series 12. Fuck me. This episode just proves that Edward Heim III is a bad writer for Doctor Who. And yet, he's being brought back next series. Fucking kill me. This episode has now reached meme status with how bad it is. It's so fundamentally broken in every possible way imaginable, it's impressive. With Spyfall Part 1 and 2, there's at least some good things in them. Lenny Henry in particular is the only one who gives a good performance. Orphan 55 is one of the worst episodes of Doctor Who ever created. It's up there with Love and Monsters on meme capability. Surely Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror isn't this bad, right? Well, let's find out. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, despite having one of the worst titles for an episode ever, is a pretty good episode, by Chibnall era standards. Probably because he had nothing to do with writing it. While this episode is good compared to Chibnall era standards, compared to the other standards, it's still weak. But undeniably, this has some of the best acting from the Chibnall era. The actor who plays Tesla, whose name I won't try to say out of respect, does an impeccable job as Tesla, and he's undeniably the highlight of the episode. But as I've said many times in the past, a good performance can't save a shit script. So let's take a look at Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. This episode starts similarly to how some of the best episodes of Series 12 start, and that's not focusing on the FAM! These are usually the best parts of the episodes, as spending less time on these insufferable characters is an absolute yes from me. And this opening is great. We get to see how Tesla fits into the world at the time, and his talk at Niagara Falls was very well done. And I was beginning to like where this was going. Showing off his machine to the businessmen made it seem like this was going to be a more personal episode, with no stupid forced villains or monsters like in... Oh. Never mind. At least in the opening they were kept to a minimum with the screen ball. Unfortunately, that good streak stops the second my favourite Doctor steps on screen and her and Tesla get on a train. Wait, what? The first time I saw this, I genuinely thought that I missed something. They go so quickly from the room to the FAM train, I thought I missed a scene. Like, did they jump onto the train or something? We don't even get a shot of it or anything. Getting back on track again, see what I did there, the action picks up again. And this scene feels very inspired from the films of that time, so this was a nice touch. The most interesting part for once actually comes from the Doctor. I know, I'm as shocked as you. When 13 and Tesla clash with him not giving over the green ball, and she says she'll keep an eye on him until she finds out what it is, and I've got to say, Jodie was pretty good here. It was all going great until she said...
So where's this lab then?
Jodie cannot pull off the dark to sudden light like most Doctors can, making this scene cringy as fuck. Also, if you're wondering if the villains are as cheap as they were last week, in the opening scene, the villain is using a Silurian gun. Ah! Could you not have just designed a weapon? Is it seriously that hard? How incompetent are the fucking apes running this show? But at least the fam actually have a reason to be following someone around for once. Which is nice compared to the usual, just the Doctor gawking over a famous person. When we arrive in New York, I once again feel like I have to compliment the actor who plays Tesla. He suits the role so well, he fits the nationality, and he looks like he was born to play this role. He gives the best performance of the episode. He would be the best of the series, you know, if this didn't fucking happen, but Anyway, in New York we get some great dialogue about the Doctor and Tesla being inventors, but the good dialogue is mostly off Tesla's side. His dialogue is great, while the Doctor just agrees with him in a boring way. Also, this scene would be a lot more impactful if we saw 13 actually invent some things throughout her tenure, instead of just using the ugly sonic screwdriver every 0.5 human seconds. Every other Doctor I can think of just has one thing that they invented. 10 and his thing that goes ding, 12 and his Tudis, and so many, many more.
Judeus?
No, Tudis. It's called the Tudis. I don't even bother.
The story then introduces Thomas Edison, and once again, Jodie just ruins this scene with this awfully done interruption. This scene is so painfully predictable as well, like the second the people strangely move out their way for some reason, as if they thought this random little annoying woman was important. I knew all she would do would just be sarcastic and throw accusations at the poor fucker. On the topic of the poor fucker, Thomas Edison is one of the biggest issues in this episode, and they do such a shit job of making him interesting. Or even more than just a one-dimensional Trump clone. Instead of getting the usual man bad, he's forced the message of businessman bad. You're really making fucking strides here, holy shit, I never knew that businessman was bad. The one thing I'll give them with his character is this sign with his name on, because not gonna lie, it was kinda funny. But just having characters like this for the main leads to take their anger out on is such a shit thing. At any opportunity they can, they have to remind us, Edison is bad! And the opposite applies for Tesla. At any chance they can, they have to remind us, Tesla good! This is such a boring way to present it without making it complex or interesting. No, it's just, white man bad, Serbian man good. Also, you know, just because it's this era, if the races were reversed then the opposite would apply. Just saying. And now we arrive at the consistent worst aspect of the Chibnall era historicals. The aliens. To be fair, out of all of them, this one and Haunting of Villa Diodati make the most sense to have aliens in them, as Tesla thought he received signals from other worlds, and Haunting because Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. But in this story, they are so out of place and forced. Them kidnapping Tesla to fix their ship up. Okay, first of all, I've got to say the music that plays here is atrocious. Even by Segan Akinola standards, and the bar is already all the way down to the pits of hell. Anyway, them getting captured to fix this ship is lame, but at least it's somewhat original. It's not just world domination like fucking the Master. Also, you'd think a sympathetic character like the Doctor would want to help these creatures that are so useless and fucking inept they can't even build a spaceship for themselves. You'd think she'd help them, but nah. Back down on Earth, we get this cloak boy with comedically red eyes. Seriously, this is making the effects in Survival look fantastic.
Stay still! Will you stay still, you idiots? I don't know how many times I gotta tell you not to move! You move! You move!
And they stop. This being with immense power that kills a room full of people instantly. They stop it by pushing a desk at it. First pushing a vent into a wall, and now pushing a desk against a threat. What the fuck has this show come to? Why doesn't it just fucking kill them, for fuck's sake? After another terrible scene with two of these creatures, the Scorpion Queen makes her first appearance. And I'm gonna be honest, when I saw her in the trailers, I was quite excited. I thought maybe she was gonna be one of the Rachnos' children that survived the Doctor trying to drown them all, and she could have been seeking revenge or something. But in reality, it's just a poor man's Rachnos. Seriously, the designs are so similar, yet this one is 10 times more cheap. Yet, the Runaway Bride that came out 14 years ago still looks impressive. And the Rachnos is actually a threatening villain. The second this cheap clone shows up, the quality of the episode just drops significantly. In the TARDIS, the Doctor says that high-speed inventing is her speciality. Which, if you remember what I said before, I said this could be shown interestingly. But for some reason, the pacing takes a complete stop so that we can hear this irrelevant bitch's take on the whole thing. Like, come on, we might actually see 13 do something of value for once. And then it's just taken away from us. Like, why? This scene is so pointless, it just feels like filler to an already long episode. Also, there's more unnecessary cringy Edison hate in the TARDIS. And outside the TARDIS. In the scene outside the TARDIS is so fucking painful to sit through. As I mentioned earlier, the annoying Edison hate is just painful to sit through. Like, in the scene in the TARDIS, he's just admiring it like anyone else would when they say it. And then Graham's just like, "Oi, son, stop thinking about money, you greedy bitch." He's literally just asking how it works, you uneducated fuck. And outside the TARDIS, he has another go at him after he compliments it. Nina Mativia. If you're trying to make us dislike Edison, you are fucking failing tremendous. If anything, I like him more than everyone else in this shit episode, except Tesla. Because he's just getting verbally abused for no fucking reason. And then this scene just ends with Grim looking smugly as if to say, "Look Doc, I can be an SJW too." Fuck off! Why is this series constantly trying to make the only good thing about Series 11 an old annoying cunt? It's a shame because the story started getting back on track once Tesla started defending himself and Yaz got threatened with death. Now please, poor man's Rakdos, finish her off before the Doctor
I'm gonna have to disagree with that. Nice place you've got here.
Even before 13 comes in and ruins another scene, you can tell the story's building up to a shitty ending. Back on the ship isn't much better either, with the Scorpions shooting lasers out of their tails. Oh, fuck me. The fucking kamikaze dive bombing quality continues as we see how incompetent this queen is. 1 second she wants the Doctor to help Tesla, the next she wants her dead. Makes sense. And Tesla sent a signal back to space and he obviously assumed that it didn't work. Yet Yaz, the strong, independent woman she is, responds with such a witty remark. All of the most powerful women in history were not ready for it.
Something's punching up.
I didn't know it worked.
Seriously?
Shut the fuck up, you annoying, unlikable cow! The Doctor then takes a picture of the Scorpion's ugly mug and they escape. And then, just like Spyfall Part 2, the plans just delve into the realm of stupidity. So once again, I'm not going to waste my time, or your time, explaining it. The only scene I liked of this bizarre heist plan thing was Edison convincing people to stay inside. And then that is immediately ruined by the Scorpion showing up in this terrible scene. First of all, this is meant to be the Scorpions at full threat and they are shown to be fucking useless. Again! As they mostly just trip over each other and everything. That's so shit. And honestly, this action scene is so boring. I was more impressed at how fast Thomas Edison was, to be honest. Considering he's an older gentleman, he's a bit of a speedy boy. And after that, we do what this era loves to do the most. Stand around and waffle. I'm not gonna lie, Grim got in a pretty funny line.
Don't worry, this ain't our first rodeo.
You've never been to a rodeo.
You're not helping, Ryan.
But that's the only plus to this scene. In the ending feels like it's straight out of Series 7. It's so anticlimactic and rushed, it's ultimately pointless. I mean, I like what they did with the TARDIS laying, it's very visually appealing and I'm glad it's changed from its ugly norm. They do this a lot this series and it really does look nicer. There's a very subtle scene where the Doctor talks about a dead planet. Remember, it's very, very subtle! See, it's like a dead planet, guys. It's like Gallifrey. Remember, Gallifrey was destroyed? Are you that stupid that you don't remember that? And then, the Doctor gives the poor man Sycorax an anti-MacGuffin and uses the Sonic on it. And that's how they resolve the issue. What? Did that sound anticlimactic as fuck? That's because it is. Then we get the generic goodbyes and the Doctor giving a history lesson to Yaz. And that is it. Shit goodbye Tesla music and all. So that was Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, and my god, this episode could have been so much better. The obvious highlight is Nikola Tesla himself, wonderfully performed in this episode. And Thomas Edison was also really well performed in this episode, and I ended up liking him a lot more than the creators intended. But the awful villain, the shitty rush resolution, and the constant Trump man bad messages make this episode an absolute chore to sit through. And don't get me wrong, this is far from the most offensive episode this series has made. Like, I'd take 12 Nikola Tesla's Nights of Terrors over another Praxeus any day. But this episode is honestly just quite boring. The villain is laughably bad and the stakes do not exist. And the annoying subtle moment was just unneeded. And making the relationship between Tesla and Edison so one note should be a crime. And there's so many empty, boring conversations in this episode that drag it out so much longer than it needs to be. The companions are as useless as they always are, and they add nothing to this episode, except for one good line from Graham. But even he's annoying in this episode. And Yaz being an insufferable cunt makes me hate her even more than I already did. Which is super fucking impressive because she's already the second worst character in the universe. No one is worse than this disgrace of a master. Also, because you've seen her in the thumbnail, the Rani from the Sarah Jane Adventures plays the villain, and she was completely wasted here. This poor man's Sycorax is such a bad villain, she can't exactly do well with what she's given. Overall, this episode isn't the worst thing ever made, but I'd never want to rewatch this unless I just want to see Tesla's performance again. By the standards of this series up to this point, however, this is better than every episode that came before it. Up next, the return of Captain Jack Harkness. Fugitive of the Judoon is what I'm dubbing the trick episode of Series 12. The trick is tricking the majority of people who've seen it into thinking it's one of the greatest things ever made, due to two obvious reasons. But when you actually look at this episode critically, you realise that it has no plot, and overall, without one obvious sexy man coming back, it is a bad episode. And I'm not gonna lie, this episode tricked me. It tricked loads of people I know, and I'm not exactly proud that I fell for the spell of the sexiest man in the world returning. Because this episode is by definition fanwank reassurance. Fanwank reassurance is a measure Chris Chibnall took knowing that this series was failing due to the appalling Series 11. So he crammed this episode halfway through the series to reassure everyone. Look, guys, we have Jack, the show isn't dead. Look, guys, we have another incarnation of the Doctor, the show isn't dead. And I think the reason I was tricked by this was thinking that both these ideas would go somewhere in the finale. Spoilers, they don't. Jack is in the episode to tickle the balls of the RTD era fans like myself, and the Ruth Doctor is here for everyone who's sick of 13. And Ruth is barely in the finale, despite this episode of just pure setting her up. And Jack isn't even in the fucking finale, so this episode in the long run is ultimately pointless. But, with all that out the way, let's review Fugitive of Captain Jack Harkness. This episode begins with showing us this character Ruth and her suspicious husband Lee. I did kinda like how they subvert the expectations by revealing that he isn't evil. And it just turns out that he was the Ruth Doctor's companion, but this alone raises issues. The Ruth Doctor, unfortunately, despite all the theories that would have been better, comes before the first Doctor, William Hartnell. Who, if you see the first part of The Unearthly Child, don't watch the other ones, they're shit. As we see in An Unearthly Child, the Doctor clearly doesn't like humans or travelling with others, and he only travels with his granddaughter. And he only accidentally travels with humans. Over the first Doctor's era, we see him warm to humans, getting traits from each companion that travels with him over time. So why the Ruth Doctor is travelling with one exactly, I don't know. But then again, because this episode is incredibly tightly written, we don't actually know what Lee is. There's a line later on to imply that he isn't human, but is he a Time Lord? Back to the present of the episode. It does a good job of making Ruth feel like a nice character, because everyone was just ignoring her. And this does make us feel a bit bad for her, as she seems like a nice person. After that, we meet the greatest character in cinematic history all years, Alan, who makes coffee. Not just coffee. The greatest coffee I've seen in my entire life, and okay, not gonna lie, he is kinda funny. He reinforces the idea that Lee's a freak by presenting it in a folder, which is obviously hypocritical, and it leads to a funny scene. Now, obviously, because this is scored by Nikola, the music ruins this scene completely. But after the atrocious soundtrack in Night of Terror, I don't know what else I expected. Luckily, the Rhino boys show up in their usual fashion, but this segment is where things just get messy. We cut from Ruth, to the Judoon ship, to the boring TARDIS, and it's annoying. Back to back to back to back to back, and they should have just cut the Judoon ships anyway, because they just feel like filler. Wasn't I complaining about filler in the last review as well? The TARDIS scene just feels pointless as well, reminding us that the Master destroyed Gallifrey, treating the audience like children who can't remember the most important location in the universe being destroyed AGAIN! And I'm sorry, right, but what happened to the whole Gallifrey is saved but it's lost in another dimension? 13 just hops there and back constantly with no effort required. The last time before this, the Doctor took 4.5 billion years to get there, but 13 just goes there whenever she ditches the farm. Nice. I do like how even in the TARDIS scenes 13 admits they just ask too many questions. Because if I travelled with people as annoying as them, I'd say the same, to be honest. And the Judoon cataloguing people to find the culprit was a nice callback. And I like how in this episode Chibnall casually continues his fetish of killing old women. Seriously, Spyfall Part 2 and Orphan 55. And now this! I mean, I'm not complaining because it's funny, but still, it's bizarre. The scene with Alan's cake was pretty funny as well, and seeing Lee cut off this simp was also funny. And even Graham gets in a good line about the shittiness of this cake before he teleports away. After Alan is killed in an unintentionally comedic way, we get the confrontation of the Doctor and the Judoon. And I'm not gonna lie, this scene is almost good. Ryan gets in a good line. Yaz almost has some semblance of character, and the Doctor's authority is shown decently here. And the number bit at the end was funny. And then it happens.
Don't move. Seriously, not a muscle. Trust me, they get everywhere. By the way, looking good. You can get excited now.
You miss me, right?
A few things are wrong with this scene despite it being beautiful. Number 1. This lighting is terrible. Number 2. This music is fucking shit. This is not Jack music. Number 3. This scene is genuine perfection now.
If you even flinch, it'll set off the laser spikes. Trust me, they get everywhere. You can get excited now.
You miss me, right?
We met. Still cheesy. Regeneration can't change that much from here. How you been, Doctor?
Now that's over. Holy fucking shit, he's back. Jack fucking came back. Jack is back. Jack came back. What did I say? He came back. I'm always getting messages. Oh, Fugitive's so bad. It's so double. Jack is here. I do not care about the quality if Jack is here. He is the best!
You miss me, right?
Yes! Every single scene with Jack is obviously the best part of the episode. He has the best jokes and the funniest dialogue, and putting him in the same room as these companions is just embarrassing, as it just shows how boring they are while Jack just radiates character. But in Jack's final scene, he raises the problem with him being here. Jack is just here to make sure that people watch the finale, and this is annoying. His inclusion in this episode is utterly pointless, other than to say, "Hey guys, we'll watch the finale, please." And this, ultimately, is a waste of Jack. As I said in the intro, Jack isn't even in the finale. Chibnall just put Jack here to try and regain viewers, and it didn't even work. And do you have any idea how long we waited for Jack back? He hadn't been in Doctor Who for 10 years and 25 days by the time Fugitive aired, and Torchwood ended 9 years ago. Bringing Jack back just to promote your shitty finale and try and raise viewers is a shitty thing to do. And not to mention, Jack is on the screen for less than 5 minutes and doesn't even meet the Doctor. While cramming Jack in at this episode is obviously the highlight of the episode and this series as a whole, in the long run it was ultimately pointless. That doesn't mean I'm not gonna love him though. It's quite sad that Jack's less than 5 minutes of screen time literally beats out everything after Twice Upon a Time. Just put Capaldi back, for fuck's sake. Look, he might have been shit throughout the majority of Series 10, but I'd take a shitty bored Capaldi over this Chibnall era dribble any day. The Doctor then interrogates two innocent people essentially, and this scene is quite well done. Lee especially seems incredibly suspicious, and the build-up is well done here, and the dialogue is quite good. Then, after a scene of more ball-tickling with this character Gat, great name, we arrive at the cathedral with some bizarre scenes in them. The scene of Ruth kicking around the Judoon was a really double-edged sword. On one hand, the reveal of Ruth being the fugitive was so obvious it's almost painful. Like, come on, why else would we be following her around and not Lee if he was the fugitive? Also, the fight scene when Ruth kicks around the Judoon is so shit. It does that thing a lot of action with bad directors do where they just move around the camera so you're under the assumption the action is good when it really isn't. And the Judoon being beaten this easily just nullifies their threat level completely. And on the other hand, I guess it builds up the mystery of Ruth well, kinda. The scene with Ruth being confused on who she was is alright, I guess. But this fucking lighthouse looks terrible. Also, the Doctor being confused here doesn't work to great effect. Because 13 either always knows what's going on with no challenge, or she just annoyingly asks questions constantly. And then this is where the shit truly hits the fan. After one last scene with the sexy man telling us to watch the finale, we get the shit that I despised almost as much as Yaz or the Satcher Master. So after the Doctor stands on the tower, she for some reason decides to dig a hole. Quick note, how can 13 even make digging a hole annoying? These grunting noises she makes are so annoying and so obviously fake, like come on! You are digging a hole yet you're still fucking up. Just watch Heaven Sent, Capaldi does that shit properly. And alongside this scene we see Ruth smash a fire alarm filled with regeneration energy. I fucking hate this. First of all, who the fuck decides to store that energy in a lighthouse alarm? What's wrong with just the fob watch, for fuck's sake? What if the place was just on fire and some random farmer just fucking gets regeneration energy? Also, why is the thing calling to her? In the Blood 2-parter, there was a perception filter on the watch so John Smith couldn't even look at it. It wasn't calling to him. And on top of that, the regeneration effect looks fucking awful. Why is it that after the end of time, the regeneration effect slowly started getting worse over time until we get this awful shit? Alongside this, 13 digs up plot hole number 2. Why does the TARDIS look like a police box? It's a pretty well-known fact that the chameleon circuit broke in 60s London and that's why it looks like a police box. So why does this pre-Hartnell incarnation have a police box, for fuck's sake? This is such an easy thing to fix. Just have it be a TARDIS cylinder. It's that simple, but you still manage to fuck it up, you simpletons. Anyways, yeah, I hate this incarnation of the Doctor, and I honestly hope she's revealed to be a dark manifestation or something. I hope the same for this Master as well. I don't see what people say in her. She's just a nothing Doctor. I honestly prefer Jodie to her, and Jodie is, well, was my least favourite Doctor. The only thing I even come close to liking about Ruth is where she basically just insults 13. Because it was funny, but not for the reasons intended. Also, the two speaking in unison was beyond annoying. This was done better in the two Doctors, but it's done with purpose and to comedic effect. And let's be honest, Ruth's sarcasm just shows that she's a poor man's Pertwee. In this ship-placed thing with the Judoon and Gat, I actually have to give credit to Jodie for once, as her performance is quite good, for a nice change. Her outburst is good even though weak compared to her predecessors, and she outsmartens the other two, and I like it. However, after that we are shown the other massive issue with this episode. Yeah, I know, there's too many to fucking count at this point. It is revealed that Ruth would have had to be a Doctor in the past, and this episode leaves that concept open for the finale. And if you've seen the finale, you know it doesn't. This is the worst sort of episode, the episode that rely on the finale to be good. And Timeless not only makes this episode retroactively pointless, but it makes every single episode of Doctor Who ever made worse. So this scene of the two talking is just pointless. Jodie's acting is once again good here, as we see her confused and bewildered and she genuinely looks distraught. And the scene in the TARDIS isn't the worst thing ever, with the fam talking about who the Doctor is and the dialogue between them is good. But like most scenes, the shitty music ruins this scene, making it feel so cheesy and pandering to an annoying degree. Also, this episode leads into Praxeus, which is one of the worst things I've seen in my life. So that was Fugitive of the Captain Jack Harkness cameo, and I've got to say, this episode was really bad. While there's a few decent jokes and lines in this episode, there's so much wrong with it. The bad outweighs the good here. First off, this episode is so clearly Chibnall's desperate attempt to keep the viewers interested, with the RTD era pandering crammed to the max here, forcing in the Judoon, bringing back Jack after 10 years to use him for less than 5 minutes, introducing the worst Doctor in existence and promising the finale will do something with her, and then the finale doesn't do anything with her, making this episode just a waste of time. On top of that, this episode has awful effects, ugly cinematography, mostly bad directing, no plot, an anticlimactic ending as it basically just tells us what's the finale, wastes the Judoon, wastes Jack, and ultimately is a worthless experience. Unless you want to watch Jack's scenes, never watch this. It's not even like Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, where I can at least say that Tesla carried the whole episode. Because the second Jack leaves this episode, it just dives into the pits of hell of quality, just becoming cock-teasing for the finale, which, if I haven't made clear enough, is the worst thing ever made by humans. Up next is probably the most worthless episode of Doctor Who ever written. Praxeus, I can safely say, is the most worthless episode of this entire series and easily one of the worst of the show. There is nothing to this episode, and it didn't even make me feel anything. Every other episode of this series has at least made me feel something. Spyfall Part 1 made me feel disappointed. Spyfall Part 2 was a mess and made us feel angry. Orphan 55 is fucking hilarious in how awful it is. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror had some interesting things in it. Fugitive brought back Jack, but everything else was a mess. Can You Hear Me made me feel disappointed. Haunting of Villa Diodati made me feel somewhat optimistic. Ascension of the Cybermen made me feel an impending sense of doom. And The Timeless Children made me want to kill myself. But Praxeus was just nothing. After the episode finished, me and my dad collectively said, wow, that wasn't anything. There's not even enough to get angry about. It's just a worthless shit show. And with that, let's start reviewing one of the most boring episodes of Doctor Who ever made. This episode begins awfully with this terrible commentary from the Doctor which paints the world in the most generic way possible. 7 billion lives, all connected. Like, come on, we're like a minute in and this episode has already made me age 47 years. Then that's bizarrely changed into a scene in a shop. Wait, this is such a random transition. Could we not have just had the episode open on this chase scene that could have lasted longer than 10 fucking seconds? The cop who was chasing down this kid is called Jake, played by Warren Brown, someone who has been in too much Big Finish to count. But at least there's something for Big Finish fans to be happy about, finally seeing this character on screen. I don't know if he's playing the same character as he is in Big Finish, I hope not because his character in this is boring as fuck. There was some semblance of an idea shown here because he's too resentful to have forgiveness. Maybe this could be mirrored to the Doctor because we know that even though the Doctor saved Gallifrey and undid his wrongdoings of the Time War, he still doesn't forgive himself for committing genocide. But, of course, this goes absolutely nowhere and he's reduced to a Chibnall tag-along. Quick note to the apes running this show. Stop hiring people with recognisable backgrounds who would be great in Doctor Who. Stop reducing them to tag-alongs. It happened with James Buckley, and now it's happening with Warren Brown. I'm sure the Big Finish fans are over the moon about this. This episode also suffers from what I'm going to dub shit flicking. Shit flicking happens a lot in this episode, and it begins here with way too much going on. The first one was with that Astro guy, the second is wasted talent number 456, and the third is this Brazilian vlogger girl who's filming at this trash place for some reason. And for another unknown reason, her and this girl sleep there. Like fucking tramps. The only reason they are here is to set up that absolutely brilliant concept villain that are the Birdemic. These things are laughably awful. Not only do they look cheap as shit, they look bad, and they aren't threatening. This series is seriously struggling with threats, isn't it? Warren then no-clips to Hong Kong because he got a no-message ID telling him to go there. Oh, for Christ's sake. You're telling me this ex-cop got a text message telling him to go somewhere, and didn't even think of telling the station where he used to work or anything. I'm so fucking done with this show. Then we get this unintentionally funny scene where someone throws a bird at this poor woman. Then Ryan conveniently pops up and says,
"Hey, don't touch it. Something's wrong with the birds."
Listen, I like Tosin Cole. I really do. But my god, he cannot do dramatic acting to save his life. Then my two favorite companions show up with keys that we don't know how they got. And then we get our fourth shit flick seeing 13 run along a beach like a fucking moron. Wasn't I just complimenting Jodie last video for actually being decent for once? And then she goes and does this. Thank you, 13, for making me look like an idiot. Well, a bigger idiot than I already am. And then this episode's awful editing shows its ugly face again when we cut back to Ryan. This is the same problem that happened with Orphan 55, just throwing us into a scenario we know nothing about and not letting it breathe or show itself in an interesting way. Oh, and you want to know what these places have in common? Very unusual energy patterns. Could you think of a more bland, boring sentiment to base an episode on? It's like the typical Chibnall issue in episodes before he even became showrunner, where the Sonic would just pick up unusual energy patterns. It's so obvious this was given no thought, as Yaz should be the only one to know what to do. After all, she is a police officer. I think it's an easy thing to forget. Ryan just picks up a dead bird and Graham, he does something. After more shit flick whiplash with a cringy scene with Ryan, then another with the other two, we cut back to the doctor with this fucker exploding. And unintentionally comedically, none of them give a shit. Seriously, this is just out of character for 13. She's not exactly the brooding, dark risk-taker that was Capaldi in Series 8, and even when 12 would let people die, the people around him reacted appropriately. And then you cut to this doctor who doesn't care. These randos don't even care. Everything's off. And then more whiplash happens when we cut back to Ryan and this upcoming YouTube vlogger. And then we get more logic of the geniuses who wrote this episode when we find out the vlogger's partner was jumped by birds, probably screamed, an ambulance came to get her, and then the vlogger didn't even wake up. Like, what the fuck is going on? Don't you think it would be more natural if this accident happened in the morning than the scream woke her up? And then Ryan shows up? That would give her more of a reason to be suspicious. But then again, I'm asking for logic in a Chibnall script, I don't know what I'm expecting. Back to these two. In the hospital, we get another awful scene where someone succumbs to Praxeus. And once again, no one cares except this Brazilian vlogger girl, but even she just gives a tame reaction. Like, since no one is taking this stupid threat seriously, could they not write in a joke? Where the vlogger character films this and they could make a joke about how fucked vloggers are? Instead of having her apparent best friend die and then we just get this terrible little bit of acting. Oh, and as if you think it couldn't get any worse, the music is awful. Another whiplash sends us to Hong Kong where Warren shows up his acting capabilities.
We went round the other way.
Chat, 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 chat.
I wish he stayed condemned to the realms of Big Finish. Then we get an awful chase scene and god I miss the tense days of action in this show. Ever since Chibnall took over, the action in this series has taken a complete back seat and has been consistently shit in both series. Like in Ascension when they just stand at the ship door and not a single Cyberman shoots them. Even in weaker episodes of Doctor Who, the action has always been good, or at least interesting. In The Nightmare in Silver, which is a bad episode, we actually get a sense of urgency and the action is good. It's just resolved in one of the dumbest ways possible. The show now feels more boring than ever because the stakes are always non-existent. And the overabundance of characters doesn't help either since they are all immortal. Having this many characters never works. The last time they did this was in the Davison era, and you know that's the worst era of Classic Who. The only thing these excess characters do of any importance is enter the TARDIS, which is so overdone. Something Davies and Moffat would always do would be introduce the characters and make them likeable and interesting before we get to see them see the TARDIS, so we actually care about what they have to say. This was done with Rose, Martha, Amy, Rory, Clara, fucking hell, even Bill. But this series is just doing it every other episode with characters we don't give a shit about. The exception being Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison. After that we get more cringe when Yaz doesn't want to go with the Doctor because she wants to go on her own. What a strong, independent woman, holy shit! And then we get possibly one of the worst shots in this show that doesn't resolve around this worst master. Look at this! It looks fucking awful! How are the people running this show getting the effect wrong that has been consistently brilliant throughout the whole revival, even when the show had no money behind it?
Ow! I did say it hurt.
No, you didn't.
Well, I meant to.
Don't you think with this line they could have made a reference to the recurring Moffat joke instead of this unfunny shit?
Telepathic circuit won't hurt a bit.
Ow!
I lied.
Then when we get there, the birds magically no-clip there as well, and our characters do nothing. Even Graham acknowledges how fucking stupid this is.
Or maybe you just want to stand out here watching birds.
Then we get more shit flick whiplash and we hear this awful fucking music again, like, come on! We get it! She's hip, trendy, and down with the kids! Stop cramming it down our fucking throats! Then Yaz starts trying to act like the Doctor in a piss-poor attempt to be like her. This doesn't work at all and her character doesn't suit this role. What little character there is. The reason this worked for Clara was because it was cleverly set up from Dark Water all the way to her death, and it makes sense because she's been travelling so long. This bullshit just comes out of nowhere and makes me want to tear my fucking hair out. Then we get another shit flick whiplash, and we arrive at the scene which is actually kind of offensive. The Doctor, instead of making the scientist do her fucking job, she makes Ryan dissect the bird. You know Ryan, the guy with fucking dyspraxia! Jesus fucking Christ, to the apes who wrote this, have you ever dissected something? Because I have. It's not exactly the easiest thing ever, and I don't even have dyspraxia. But because Ryan is a well-written character full of depth and emotion, he happily obliges. Without even questioning it. Fuck this. And then because Graham has been in drips, he just knows what he's doing. Listen, cunt, I've had my fair share of paracetamol in my day, doesn't mean I'm a medical expert. Ignoring even more tism in that scene because I genuinely can't be arsed anymore, we cut to Warren and Bradley questioning their career choices. In an okay scene. Even though Warren basically tells Graham his life story with no fight after he basically tells him to piss off. And there's a nice little bit of acting from Bradley here as he's reminded about Grace. You know how this scene could have been better though? Better music! If Murray Gold was still involved in this show, this could have been emotional as fuck. As Murray always does that thing where he'll bring back a theme from years ago and it adds more emotional weight and depth to a scene. But not anymore. This scene feels empty and hollow because of Segan Akinola's trash music. Then we get another shit flick whiplash, and we see our strong independent woman with some more brilliant script being shown to us.
We're still alive. We didn't die.
Why would you die? I wanted you to, but why would you? Then we get another shit flick whiplash to the lab and we get our reveal. No Autons, because they are actually good villains. No Sea Devils like the rumours made us think. No. It's just a false message about humans being bad and not looking after the ocean. This false shit about how we should protect the planet again? We just had this! Remember when the Doctor actually liked humans and was fascinated by them and had a genuine interest in them and had some admiration for them and the lives they lived? Nah, fuck humans, protect the planet! Then we don't get another shit flick whiplash when we find out the Asian character is bad. I don't know why she's bad, but listen man, there's only like 13 minutes left and just, it won't end. Then we get this scene. I think it just speaks for itself really, just look at it. Then we get this plastic dump heap just filled with cringe. Then the girl grabs the gun and 13 just waffles on about nothing. Not even like Tom Baker or anything. She just goes on and on and on, even though there's a gun pointed at her. Then the girl whose name I can't remember succumbs to Praxeus, and once again, no one cared! Then we get more cringy techno babble and I just can't be fucking arsed anymore. Then they go back to the TARDIS and they leave poor Warren behind, probably so he can go back to Big Finish. Then the Doctor flies into the ship just before it explodes and picks him up. This obviously created so many more questions than deliver a satisfying scene. And I've already been struggling at this script for 6 hours, I can't be arsed anymore. And then, oh my god, it's still going! The final scene to this episode is fucking dreadful, as well as the dialogue is fucking shit. The music is awful and the vlogger girl makes me want to succumb to Praxeus. So that was Praxeus, and my god, this episode is fucking terrible. This episode is just a whole lot of nothing for almost an hour straight, filled with all the Chibnall tropes, like bad acting, awful music, too many characters that we don't give a shit about, pathetic villains, and committing the #1 sin of Doctor Who, being boring. Boring, 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 boring! This episode is beyond fucking boring. It's so dull and hollow, it's just a pathetic excuse of a script. That makes me want to drink fairy liquid. At least Fugitive, while a mess, had some good scenes. What a fucking letdown in comparison. Easily one of the worst episodes of the whole show, right up there with Love and Monsters and Orphan 55. Not to mention, this episode is ugly, the effects are terrible, the cinematography's shit, and the editing makes me feel like I'm watching 4 videos at once, and not to mention it gave me shit flick whiplash. Fuck this episode all the way to hell and back. Next up is the Nightmare Man. It's not even paracetamol. After 6 reviews of nothing but negativity, I'm finally reviewing an episode I like! Woo! Today, we're going to be looking at a different show. You've probably heard of it. It's called The Sarah Jane Adventures, and it's one of the best spin-offs ever made. Today, we'll be talking about the Series 4 episode, The Nightmare Man. Wait, I'm meant to be talking about Doctor Who? Well, what the fuck is this then? Seriously, when this episode first aired, I heard one of my friends, Dale, say that he's heard people call it a Nightmare Man ripoff. But at the time of me watching the episode, I hadn't seen the Nightmare Man, so I couldn't vouch for it. But after seeing the Nightmare Man, oh my god, Can You Hear Me is borderline plagiarism, what the fuck? Seriously, how can you blatantly rip off an episode of the Sarah Jane Adventures this much and expect to get away with it? And even if this episode wasn't a rip-off of the Nightmare Man, this episode was such a letdown. Because the trailers made this episode look so interesting. But it just... let's take a look and see. This episode does actually start quite well, with an interesting opening showing us these creatures with massive claws snatch people away. Unfortunately, this scene is ruined by poorly placed stock sound effects and shitty music. So by this series standards, we're off to a good start. Unfortunately though, they don't use this location to its full advantage, as it's just used for, surprise surprise, political messages. Oh, my favourite! After we see a reused shot from Arachnids in the UK of the TARDIS landing, the Doctor drops off my favourite companions. And I thought this could be really interesting, as we see in Fugitive it's implied when the companions aren't travelling with the Doctor, she goes off and looks for the Master to an obsessive degree. And then I had this daunting moment of realisation. The Doctor is so absolutely inconsistent this series, it's baffling. In Series 11, 13 is just a generic mix of 10 and 11 and she's boring as fuck, with her morality all over the place. But in this series she's either happy-go-lucky 13 that we all like, or darker, harsher and colder 13 that distances herself from her companions. This is annoying as fuck, because darker 13 is a lot better and is a lot more interesting to watch. And we could have explored darker 13 in this bit where she's by herself. It wouldn't even need to take away from the plot of the episode, because the TARDIS could have just taken us, like, off course to the set of this episode, and then she could be like, oh, have you taken me to where the Master is, or anything? Exploring what the Doctors are like without their companions is something the new series has always gotten right. It's not fully shown with 9 because he's always with Rose, but in the first episode you see that 9 is emotionally closed off and almost defeatist. And he's still scarred because of the Time War.
It's not true. I should know. I was there. I fought in the war. It wasn't wasn't my fault. Saved your world. I couldn't save any of them.
We see with 10 that without his companions or someone to hold him back, we see the worst of his ego and god complex and all those insecurities and mistakes made over his whole tenure come to culminate in the waters of Mars. I never thought I'd use an example from Series 7, but 11 without companions is a lot darker and more likely to make mistakes, as shown in The Town Called Mercy. And 12 being on his own gave us one of the best episodes in the show's history, so... And what does 13 get? Nothing! This episode is proof that they were sort of trying to make an arc where 13 and her companions grow distant, but never take it far enough. And keep ignoring it in some episodes. But then again, we're like 5 minutes into this episode and I've already ranted, I'll stop now. We get some scenes with our lovely companions where we see their lives, basically to establish that the nightmares are starting soon. Yaz's scene is shit, and once again shows how weak her character is. Ryan's aren't much better.
Final seconds, he's done it. He's a legend. Ryan Sinclair, FIFA legend.
Fucking hell. And Graham is playing cards with his bus driver mates. Not gonna lie though, the editing is well done in this scene. Where we see Graham's visions were really fucking cool and they were trippy as fuck and they suit the tone of the episode really well. And it's a massive improvement from the 50-minute shit flick whiplash that was Praxeus. The most interesting part of this episode is the Nightmare Man himself. I know that's not his name, but like... shut up. He has a really well done and creepy introduction, and the visuals on him are just... what the fuck? But not bad what the fuck. Good what the fuck. I love it! He's one of the weirdest, creepiest villains from this era of the show, and I wish they made this story a two-part so we could see more of him. And for other reasons, but we'll get to that. However, the first nightmare isn't exactly anything special. In fact, it was fucking stupid. And at the ending, it's made to look even more stupid. When we enter the TARDIS, we get a pretty funny line from Graham.
Those planets might be.
You get me an A to Z of the universe, and I'll be able to stick my finger straight at... oh, no, I've got no idea.
And after that, he has to use the TARDIS telepathic circuits.
Don't like it, you sure it's safe?
You trust me, don't you?
Have I got to answer that?
Why?
Which really just made me miss the Capaldi TARDIS, as it's shown so much more interestingly there. But this shot of the ship kinda makes up for it. It's fucking gorgeous. But then they take down the making up for it by showing us the inside of the ship, which looks terrible. Then Fingermaster 69 returns and fingers our companions. Yes, I am aware of what I just said. And not gonna lie, these nightmares are weak shit, man. Yaz's nightmare is fucking terrible and the reveal later makes it so much worse. Ryan's is fucking awful and it has the dregs in it! Graham's is the best of the three, no surprise there, as it was about his cancer returning. Despite this leading into the worst scene with Jodie as the Doctor, more on that later, this is a pretty good scene, and it was a surprise seeing Grace again. However, Bradley's performance is so flat in this scene, it makes this massive chilling bombshell feel a lot weaker than it should. It's a shame these nightmares are so weak, especially when you consider the Nightmare Man, the story this episode is ripping off, because the nightmares in that story are actually scary. By CBBC standards anyway. Clyde imagines that he's hated by Sarah Jane and stuck in a dead-end job. Ronnie has to face her anxiety and portray Sarah Jane, while also in a dream job. And Luke is trapped in an endless corridor and is told by his best friends and his own mum that they don't want him back. And not to even mention the beautiful story Listen from Series 8, where we see that the Doctor is afraid of the dark. Both these episodes do a much better job of establishing our main character's fears, but in this episode it's just done a boring way. Even the Doctor doesn't get an interesting dream. It's just more cock-teasing of...
Be afraid, Doctor. Because everything is about to change.
Yeah. That. Fuck you. Then we get a scene between the Nightmare Man and the Doctor, and my God, he is awesome! I love how he's genuinely a match for the Doctor, yet presents himself so formally and calmly. I love how he doesn't have any ulterior motive as well. He just wants to fuck around. Very relatable. And his views on what nightmares are really interesting, and I never thought I would praise Chibnall era dialogue this much. Sadly, when the other Immortal is released, the stakes go higher, but she doesn't look threatening at all. She's too short, and next to Zelen, she just looks like she has a shitty wig on. Zelen has creepy tattoos and his general mannerisms make him look scary. She isn't scary. This series is having a constant issue of hiring people too short to be threatened. And I'm not saying shorter people can't be threatening, because Sylvester McCoy is really short, but he's extremely threatening. I don't know, it's probably just because he's a better actor. The animated section was good, I guess. It's just really boring exposition. After that, we see the Doctor retrieve her sonic screwdriver in the stupidest way possible. And it was at this moment I realised the last 35 minutes of setup I'd just seen was about to go to shit. Back with the Immortals isn't much better either, after we see the shot literally stolen from the Nightmare Man. They get confronted by the FAB! In the worst Deus Ex Machina since the Doctor falls. So after all that 35 minutes of interesting setup, the Doctor just uses a Sonic on a ball, and that is it. I'm not even joking, that's how they resolve the whole thing. So all of the interesting things set up in this episode are fucking pointless. And then it just turns into a big reminder that it's Children's Mental Health Week. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with promoting that, but they should have just done an episode focused on one of the characters' issues. Take for example, we have an episode focused on where we explore Graham's fears of his cancer and how he overcame it. Have an episode focused on Ryan where they discuss his FIFA ego. Have a Yaz-centered episode. Hell, this series at one point promised more character for Yaz. And this is all we get? A piss poor attempt at making us feel bad for her? Done in the cheapest way possible? We could have explored her depression throughout her whole life and how travelling with the Doctor made her feel whole again. But no. What an absolute letdown. And then we get the most offensive scene of this whole show. While the Timeless Children shits on the character and ruins the whole message of the show, this episode shows us the Doctor ignoring Graham's worries about his fucking cancer. What the actual fuck? At this point in the show, I was trying so hard to force myself to like 13 because she was beginning to show promise. In episodes like Spyfall Part 2 and Fugitive of the Judoon. Well, the ending of Spyfall. And then this fucking happens. Are you fucking serious? Could you actually imagine any other Doctor, even the meanest ones, doing something as fucking horrible as this? While the 6th Doctor is a sass god arsehole to everyone, he at least cares for Perry even if he does it in his own fucked up way. This scene is fucking insulting to everyone. And even when the Doctor themselves are worried or angry, they still reassure people and give them faith and hope. But 13 basically says, "Yeah, I'm too quirky and funny to help. Sorry, Graham mate, can't help you, lol." What?! Why would Graham even want to keep travelling with her? After that, if I was him, I'd just fucking leave. I have never been genuinely pissed off with the 13th Doctor before. Sure, she has shit dialogue, is cringy as fuck, and was the worst incarnation of this character. But I could never fully bring myself to despise her. But this scene is the fucking exception. Even the little scene of finally giving Ryan some fucking character wasn't enough to make for that horseshit scene. But then again, they do this thing with the Doctor and companions distancing. It ends up failing because it's not present in every episode. And then this episode ends. Absolutely fucking pathetic! So that was The Nightmare Man. I mean, can you hear me? What remains as the most disappointing episode of this era. Seriously, there was so much going for it. An interesting and wonderfully performed villain. Absolutely beautiful effects and an interesting concept for a Doctor Who episode. And then after all that setup throughout the episode, it just goes nowhere and it's ruined by a shit ending. Making this episode absolutely worthless, as everything interesting goes nowhere. They wasted so much potential with this one. They could have made this episode so much better if they gave it a second part. Or, even if it didn't have a second part, actually take the interesting shit and make it go somewhere. While this episode is nowhere near as bad as Praxeus or Orphan 55, it is such a letdown to watch. And it's still filled with the Chibnall tropes, like too many characters to not care about, awful music, and bad acting. Except for my boy Zelen, obviously. Up next, the wasted potential of the Lone Cyberman Part 1. The The Haunting of Villa Diodati proves to be one of the closest to good episodes of this series and one of the best of the era. Hell, if you take Jack out of Fugitive, this episode is better. This episode does a lot of interesting things and has a lot of interesting elements, but, like a lot of stories with great potential, and it's not exactly exempt from stupid shit either. And one of the most interesting parts of this story is let down by the preceding 2 episodes. In the long run, making this episode suck considerably. So let's take a look at Haunting of Villa Diodati. This episode begins brilliantly, showing us the setting and location of this story. While I still find these texts look stupid as fuck and impressively unprofessional, this is a great start. The lighting, something I usually have a problem with in this series, is excellent here, showing us the candlelit corridors and rooms, really accentuating the creepy atmosphere. Also, the butler is pretty funny here, reminding me of my favourite moody twat.
Bristol! Doctor, we're in Bristol!
120 miles from where we should be. Impressive.
No, not impressive. Annoying.
No, this is impressive. This is annoying.
Unfortunately, this great intro, like in many other episodes, is ruined the second the FAB show up. The creepy atmosphere set up just gets shat on by this unfunny moment, and for once, I'd actually have preferred if they kept the title sequence at the beginning of the episode. Usually I only like it when RTD did it at the beginning of a new series, as it welcomed in new viewers better and told the audience they were in for a different experience. Like the opening to Spyfall Part 1 would be better if they just started on a title sequence, instead of the shit opening we got instead. Moffat also used the title sequence more effectively in the opener episodes because we'd either have a tease of the opening before the title sequence, or we'd just have the characters vibing and then we're told what they're going to do. While this criticism is pretty irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, preferences will be preferences. I also find it really strange that Lord Brian just lets them in and lets them explore, like, what? I know if some freaks came to my door, showed me a blank piece of paper and then asked to come in, I'd tell them to fuck right off. Bizarre way to throw the FAM into a situation. Also, I think it would have been a lot funnier if the first time they see each other is when these acclaimed writers are just rolling around on the floor like fucking apes. That would be a lot funnier. Then again, the comedy is almost non-existent with this show now. The scene where they are dancing is really weird as well, but not in a bad way. I thought it was pretty funny seeing the writers casually chat shit about each other even though they can definitely hear each other. And the butler being a mood was a nice cap-off to the end of the scene as well. After we get a quick short scene showing us the vase breaking, this was a nice setup for later in the episode. The doctor then tells us the issue with the scenario. They are a man down. However, I wish this was presented in a more interesting way as none of the other poets seemed to care. If Mary seemed more concerned about the fact her soon-to-be husband was missing, this would be more interesting, and so would she. Like, in the opening scene when Brian is reading the book, what if she's like, guys, shouldn't we wait for Shelley? This would be a better setup for the mystery of where Percy is, and it would make Mary more interesting. After that, we get some fantastic editing as we follow Graham when he's looking for the shitter. The shot of the people appearing after the flashes of lightning were also creepy as fuck, and the shot of him looping the stairs was also very well done. However, one nitpick I have with this scene is wishing that Graham had a funnier line about going in circles. Or if he just didn't say anything at all, because that would be funnier. After another good lightning shot in a scene with Yaz, the Doctor does what she does best. Uses the Sonic. And we are actually shown the Doctor's gender change be used in an interesting way for the first time in forever. Lord Brian being attracted to the Doctor in this episode is brilliant, and this scene starts off 2 concepts well. The FAM not being as welcomed as initially thought, and someone being attracted to 13 in a physical way. Which, when you think about it, you'd think this had happened before. You know, before the 19th episode in. However, that little streak of greatness is then immediately ruined by a shitty scene with Ryan and Mary. While Mary's line about colonies was funny because it shows how fucking dense Ryan is, Caligari not saying a word is fucking weird, especially when you consider he challenges him to a duel later. Not gonna lie though, Graham saves the scene with a funny moment where he forbids the duel.
Will Mr. O'Brien be yours?
No.
Cheers, mate.
No, I mean, what? No. Because there's going to be no duel, I absolutely forbid it. Ooh.
And we see the hand crawl out and choke Ryan. And when the Doctor shows up, the scene gets better with the destruction of the hand. And another butler reaction.
Great shot!
I like this butler a lot more than I should. After the Doctor licks the hand, which, while disgusting, is a good scene because it reminds me of the god Tennant licking his way around the universe, and it's also a lot more like the Doctor to be more resourceful instead of just using the stupid Sonic. And then we get more of Brian drooling over 13. And these scenes are made funnier by the death stares his girlfriend give, which just reminded me of 12 looking at anyone.
No, she is from somewhere much, much stranger. The north.
Oi! We're not all strange. Shut up. Shut the fuck up.
Hi. Hey! Welcome to my diss track 2019. Morgs! Oh, you guys, it's Morgs! Welcome back!
Oh.
That wasn't even fair. I was wondering, like, what the fuck are you doing, Sam?
Okay, maybe we are. We get more scenes of the house fucking with everyone, which upped the stakes a lot and created a lot more tension. Alongside that, after we find out it's a perception filter, we get more traversing through the house, in really interesting and well done scenes. Also, we get a pretty funny scene. As obvious as it is that Jodie didn't walk into anything, this is still funny. However, miraculously, everyone ends up in the same room. No explanation is given to us and we are not shown how they get there. Come on, you were doing so well! This series has a pattern of just ignoring details that should be relevant and it's annoying as fuck. However, they make up for this annoyance the second Cyberteeth shows up because no word of a lie, I was not expecting this. As awful as the promotional material for this series was, as it basically just told us the lone Cyberman would show up in the finale, this was a brilliant reveal, because it was so unexpected. It wasn't in the trailers or anything. But this is when some of the finale cock-teasing gets more irritating than usual. The first thing the companions say when this thing shows up is that they have to remind us that Jack said it.
Jack's warning! Beware of the lone Cyberman, don't let it have what it wants!
At all costs!
Yeah, we get it, finale bait and fan wank. However, the reference to Bill being converted was brilliant. Even though Bill being turned into a Cyberman was pointless because the Doctor falls as a piece of shit and Bill gets to fucking live anyway and fucking hit the Doctor fuck! Don't worry, I'll review that episode one day because I'm aware that for some reason, most people love it. But on the topic of the lone Cyberman himself, yeah, he's mostly okay in this episode and not the other two. But I've got to say, the design is fucking fantastic. Ignoring the Cyberteeth, the sound design and battered look of this Cyberman really is unlike anything we've seen before. However, the music, as usual, is a complete letdown and we don't have any of that brilliant iconic music from the first 10 series accompanying the Cybermen. The human part of Cyberteeth was definitely the most interesting part, as he can use emotion when required, which sets up the potential for some great manipulation which we do see eventually in this episode. And we see loads of it in the next two episodes. I do think, even in this episode, it could have been made a lot more interesting if he was completely powerless, until he got the Cyberium. But then, we just get a stupid scene where he's struck by lightning. That's so dumb. And unfortunately, in the same scene, it was actually shown some promise. While the Cyber Rages are unintentionally comedic, Jodie is actually really great in this scene. She has some fantastic witty dialogue which are very well performed and delivered. And yes, I'm actually talking about Jodie's performance in a positive light. How rare is that? Unfortunately, we temporarily return to the 13 norm of just explaining things really quickly. Like, come on, we don't need an explanation on what the lightning is doing because it's completely obvious as to what it's doing. It's lightning! When we find Percy in the basement, we get another laughable fit of rage from Cyberteeth. This villain's threat levels are slowly plummeting. After we see how Percy gets the Cyberium, we get Jodie's best performance as the Doctor. in this speech where she talks about the burden of other life and the team structure is absolutely fucking fantastic. However, you know what I'm gonna say, the music in this scene is fucking awful and makes the speech all the less impactful. But the lone Cyberman, when he comes down, absolutely steals the show in this powerhouse scene. Despite him having a really stupid name, Shelley trying to turn him makes up for it. And when it backfires, my god, this scene is amazing. This horrific moment where the Cyberman uses her own personal issues against her and then rationalizes murder of his own fucking children. Wow! Thank god this era has finally had a dark episode, because they've been severely lacking for the last 3 years. The last dark episode we got, ironically, was with the Cybermen, and it was well enough in time. And what do these stories both have in common? They are both fucking terrifying. However, the resolution for this story just turned out to be a turn for the worst, as not only is it really easy, but when 13 absorbs the Cyberium, she doesn't even do anything with it. She could have used it against Cyberteeth to go and banish him or temporarily push him back or something. And it could have had a lasting effect on her or something, like you know how the 12th Doctor went blind. But no, she just gives it to the Cyberman in the most forced way possible.
What are you doing? Giving it what it wants.
But could you have been any less subtle?
Tell the doctor, the lone Cyberman, don't give it what it wants.
And then, that's it. Also, I forgot to mention that from the basement scene until the end of the episode, the companions are annoying as fuck. The ending doesn't fare much better either. They just force the Doctor into a poem. So this moment just felt a bit forced, and that was it. So that was The Haunting of Silver Turk, and I've gotta say, this episode, while one of the best of the era, still isn't the best thing ever. While the first half is really good and interesting, the second Cyberteeth shows up, it's just shit with sprinkles. There's loads wrong with it, but hey, sprinkles make them better. While Jodie's performance was actually notable in this episode, the companions are their usual terrible selves. The music is fucking appalling, and all the interesting things set up by this episode go absolutely nowhere, making this episode on rewatch feel pretty pointless. Definitely not as good as I remember it being. But there are some good scenes and moments, and the usual overstuffing of characters actually works well here. Because all these characters are likeable and interesting besides Mary Shelley herself. But the ending to this episode is really shit and overly forced, and it really feels anticlimactic. It's nowhere near as bad as the resolution in Can You Hear Me though. And at least there's some interesting ideas floating around here. And now I might as well mention the elephant in the room. That being, this story is extremely similar to Silver Turk. Not an exact beat-by-beat remake, but the concepts are literally the same. Mary Shelley, Cybermen. Come on! That's 2 episodes in a row where you just steal elements from existing episodes in the universe. Also, doesn't that basically just confirm that Big Finish isn't canon? Could we get an F in the chat for all the Big Finish fans out there? Up next, Ascension of the Cybermen. Yeah, no interest in me, that episode is fucking shit. Ascension of the Cybermen in the long run becomes the most pointless episode of Series 12. Because of a certain piece of shit that follows it not taking the interesting stuff anywhere. Making this episode absolutely fucking worthless, and to be honest I don't even remember it. Because a certain other episode overshadows this one so much. I only really remember the ending to this episode because it made me want to kill myself.
Wow! It's a good entrance, right?
No. To be honest, this is probably going to be like the shortest review I'll ever make because this episode is so fucking dull. This is the worst Cyberman story I've ever seen in my entire life.
And on that terrible disappointment...
Let's start this shit show. To be honest, this pre-title sequence moment is probably the best part of this episode. It's pretty creative and the speech is good. And it's a hook into this episode, which lets it down. And then we start this episode on this guy. Wait, who are you? Not gonna lie, despite these scenes leading into the dreadest Timeless, these are the best parts of the episode. I was expecting this to show the origin of the lone Cyberman and how he came to be, but unfortunately they are just part of whatever bullshit excuse they make in Timeless. Now obviously because there's a positive in this episode that doesn't involve the Doctor, the parts that actually feature the Doctor fucking suck. Just like in Spyfall Part 2 in the original time-hopping location with the cheesy carnival people. Also, if people keep wondering why whenever I talk about Spyfall Part 2 I just use footage from the first part, that's because the very legitimate and legal place where I get the footage for every other episode doesn't have Part 2. And I don't have the screen recorded footage anymore. So... Also, if you're wondering why the quality in Ascension suddenly looks fantastic after it's been looking shit for ages, is because until I made this review I had a smaller file of Ascension because it took up less space. And only when actually reviewing it have I got like a better file of it so the quality looks much better. This is irrelevant, why am I saying this? Anyway, yeah, these scenes with the Doctor suck. While the look of the location is nice, we don't even get a name of where we are and no details on what the Cybermen have done are given. Actually no, we are told that they essentially wiped out the human race. This brings up the problem that Doctor Who constantly has of just making the Cybermen into generic robots. This happens all the time and it's annoying as fuck. And Moffat actually set them back on track in the Series 10 finale. So seeing Chin will just make them into shittier Daleks again is just frustrating. And to mention, the dialogue in this episode is fucking pathetic. We get 3 separate explanations from the fam on what these pieces of shit do, which are all fucking useless, making this absolute filler. And then after they fail, they all, one after each other, tell the Doctor they failed. Jesus fucking Christ. How is anything meant to be taken seriously if the dialogue is as stupid as the cyber drones? Did you think I would ignore them? Not a fucking chance in hell, look at them! This design is fucking laughable and this whole scene is terrible. For some reason these fucking morons keep running out just to get killed. And then we get these shots as if we're meant to care. I said it in the Orphan 55 review and I'll say it again. How are we meant to keep engaged if the decisions being made are so fucking retarded? And Jodie's performance in this scene is terrible. It's made incredibly obvious by scenes like this that Jodie can't do shouting acting. The same shit happened in Praxeus, and watching her in scenes like this is just embarrassing to be honest. And in this scene she says that they can't make it back to the TARDIS. I wonder why? No details are given and it can't be that far away. However, Jodie's acting in this scene compared to her companions, it's fucking light years better. Even then, she can't live up to the set expectations. And once Cyberteeth showed up, the amount of stupidity knows no bounds. So the Doctor, never being cruel or cowardly, runs away from the Cybermen to act as bait. But then the Cybermen just see the fucking companions anyway, and we truly see how incompetent the Cybermen have become. Due to this fucking genius scene, where out of over 55 shots fired, yes, I counted, they hit a grand total of 0 people and a ship, doing no damage to either. What an absolute fucking joke the Cybermen have become. In their last story, the Doctor falls, which I don't even like by the way, they are still threatening as fuck and they kill the Doctor. But these useless tin robot fucks can't even kill these useless companions. Pathetic!
Is that it? Useless. Null point.
Then, after another useless character is killed as if we're meant to care, the Doctor throws a grenade she pulled out of nowhere at Cyberteeth. Remember when the show could actually create characters that the audience gave a shit about? Not even the main characters, but side characters? Like, that we actually like. Clive has more of a character to him than every single character from this fucking era, and he has about 5 total minutes of screen time. And we actually feel bad when he gets killed. And now we just have Cybermen killing planks of wood in overdramatic scenes and no one gives a shit. We get another Irish scene, and I've just got to bring up a complaint I have with these scenes. They're a lot like the Missy scenes in Extremis. While they are good, they interrupt the flow of the episode and make it feel disjointed as fuck. However, the Missy scenes don't have these fucking awful falling effects, like come on. I see you taking some inspiration from the Hand of Fear there. After some more scenes of irrelevant dribble, we get another confrontation between Cybercheeks and 13, and I was hoping this would be good. as the initial conversation between 13 and Cybertits and Horton was good until 13 ruined it by waffling. And how is this one? Well, it reveals that the Cybermen have the most boring plan in history, but it does make Lonely Boy 69 more interesting, giving us some more detail about him. But, however, because of the spineless children, this just feels pointless. Because that episode doesn't make him any more interesting, and he just gets overshadowed by it. Back to Gaz and Haim, the scene of them in the ships are fucking dreadful and boring. However, the shot of them in the middle of the cyber battlefield is fantastic, and it makes the opening shot make more sense. Not gonna lie, the first time I was watching this episode, I was just waiting for Jack to show up, and I thought the banging sound on the outside of the ship was just him waiting outside. I really wish that was the case. Also, the shot of the ship flying into the cyber ship was fucking awesome. However, the few good things about these scenes are ruined by these annoying characters. Like, we land on this cyber ship and the dialogue we get is fucking atrocious. Will you shut the fuck up and just show us the Cybermen for God's sake? Back on the Doctor's side of things, shit isn't much better here either. We find out that there's a gateway that humanity is going through to prevent their extinction. Utopia! And we get a somewhat nice shot of CGI ruined by shitty cinematography. Once again. And then it turns out this portal is to fucking Gallifrey. What a great big surprise! As if it wasn't the most obvious thing on the fucking planet. And then we get more Utopia vibes, as the worst master jumps out of the portal just as annoying as always, and completely derails the story, just like he did before.
Be afraid, Doctor. Because everything is about to change.
Alright! We fucking get it! Shut the fuck up and die, you fuck! So that was Ascension of the Cyberman. The worst Cyberman story I've seen in my life. The only good parts of this episode have absolutely nothing to do with this plot. Cyberteeth is getting more annoying and less interested by the second, and it's just filled with the usual Chibnall shite. Too many characters to not give a shit about. Awful acting, absolutely no stakes, abysmal music and ugly cinematography. There is literally nothing to like about this episode. And having the Master overshadow the Cybermen again just shows how dried up and worthless this show has truly become. And obviously the appearance of the Sacha Master instantly makes this episode 10 times worse. Up next, the worst episode in Doctor Who history. Now we're here. The absolute worst episode of Doctor Who ever created. There is absolutely nothing good about this episode. In every possible aspect, it is a fucking failure. I have never sat through another piece of media that makes me as fucking furious as this. And I had to watch it more than once. Fucking kill me. And fair bit of warning, the only thing saving me from not wanting to die editing this is listening to Jack's glorious theme. So that's all you're gonna hear this video. And maybe I'll give you John Sims' theme if you're lucky. This depravity starts by already telling us how lazy it's gonna be by not even giving us an explanation of how the Master survived. This is the first fucking scene of the episode, it's already pissed me off. Like, we still don't even know where he is in the Master's timeline. The obvious assumption is after Missy because, despite the fact the Master and the Doctor are time travelers, they always meet in the right order. This fact is pretty stupid, especially in Classic Who. But are we really expecting Chris Chibnall to be the first one to break this tradition? No. But if he is after Missy, which, let's be real, he will be, because literally no explanation on how he survived is given, and why he's reverted back to a one-dimensional classic master. Hell, actually, he would make more sense as a classic master, because he's just as lame as Anthony Ainley, except he has no charm, and every time he speaks, I want to die. Sacha's performance as the Master is so fucking abysmal he would fit right into Season 24. Do you want to know why? Because Season 24 is complete pantomime dog shit.
Take my hand, or I turn them into tiny human dolls right here.
Imagine actually being given that in a script and having to say it. Seriously. Also, I brought this up in the Spyfall Part 1 re-review, but why is tissue compression a complete joke now?
Really want me to show you I'm serious? Eeny, meeny, miny,
That's not how eeny, meeny, miny, mo works, you fucking ham sandwich! Also, I love how the Master brags about destroying Gallifrey. Just completely shitting on another arc this show has set up over the last 15 years. And I guess now the 50th is pointless because the Master destroyed Gallifrey anyway. Also, I'm calling bullshit that this pathetic excuse of a Master could destroy all of Gallifrey when the Time Lords were at war with the Daleks for over hundreds of years and they didn't even destroy it. The Doctor fucking destroyed it. But the Master didn't destroy the planet, he just killed everyone on it? Bull fucking shit!
Why did you do this?
Not telling you.
Oh my fucking god. He's so awfully... How is this real? How did we fall so far from grace, from the legendary John Sim, to the excellent Missy, to this? His existence shits on every Master story of the revival. The best Master, way back in 2007, has just shown that he wants to one-up the Doctor, with the rivalry still being the strongest here, but he never tries to kill him. Hell, they go so far on a journey just in the Series 3 finale and the end of time that he sacrifices his life to save the Doctor. And then, in The Doctor Falls, we don't talk about that because it doesn't make sense. All they had to do to fix him in The Doctor Falls was do the thing I suggested in the Series 10 ranking, which I'm not actually sure if is out by the time this video will be out, so this won't make sense. And then we got the excellent Missy, who despite knowing the Doctor would never approve of her, tries her best so that they can be friends again. And as Missy went on more and more, she felt worse about what she did, and became more like the Doctor. And even the two temporarily become friends again, until the one time she goes to stand with the Doctor, she dies. And even in the Sim says she can't regenerate. And as I said in my Spyfall Part 1 review, nah, the Master's just back. They don't even attempt to explain how he survived, or how he got here, but he just is. And now he just wants to kill the Doctor, for some reason. His entire existence and motivations make no fucking sense. He's the Jared Leto of the Masters. The writers don't bother writing anything that makes any fucking sense because he's crazy! After some shite scenes of utter irrelevance, we get another scene with the best Master and Doctor.
Put a wet room there. Screening room there. Torture room in the cellar, naturally.
Who hired you and thought it was a good idea? You are fucking terrible in every possible way.
Graduated. Assassinated presidents.
No. Don't you even dare disgrace the deadly assassin, you fucking plague!
Oh. Excuse me. Check my notifications.
I want to break every single thing I own. Jesus Christ, this is fucking insufferable.
Ooh, you look rough. Or is that choice? Don't mean to conversion shame you.
I'm going to burn something. I'm actually going to burn something. I fucking have to!
I want you to think of me as your new best friend.
Guys, I found something to burn.
Promise I'll roll out the red carpet. It's red because it's drenched in the blood of our people.
Nah, I'm going back to burning.
Squadron. Deletion squad. A recruitment patrol. Human juicing party.
Please, for the love of God, shut the fuck up! After Cyberteeth sends the Edgelord Cybermen down to kill Ryan and these other two irrelevant boards, we get a scene between Graham and... her. They don't bother actually showing us the interesting part of looking inside the Cyberman and seeing what's inside and how it's been changed. No, we just get this boring scene where Graham attempts to slide into Yaz's DMs, and my God, is it fucking cringe! This is such a last-minute effort to make people try and care about Yaz. Just a little note to the writers, it's not fucking working! And the attempt of humour afterwards, oh, kill me. Remember when this show was actually funny and could create characters that we cared about and we didn't need scenes being like, listen audience, this character is good, like her, you fucks! Then we cut back to the worst Master giving us some exposition, and he says that he was just playing around in the Matrix, hacking it around? This alone raises several questions. 1. How the fuck did you get to Gallifrey? It's supposed to be fucking lost. And friendly reminder, you are dead! Gallifrey being lost is one of the details Chibs just ignores, because in Spyfall Part 2 the Doctor just goes to Gallifrey with no effort put in. I never thought I'd be complimenting Series 7, but in Name of the Doctor, we at least see the Doctor struggling to get the TARDIS to Trenzalore. No explanation is given how the Master got there, how he got to the Matrix, how he destroyed Gallifrey! Jesus fucking Christ, there is so many details just ignored in this episode. It's the most lazily written schlock I've seen in my life.
If the history between us means anything to you.
I do believe you're appealing to my better nature. And we both know I don't have one.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt! Stop shitting on all that previously established friendship built up over the last 13 years, you stupid waste of fucking life! Then we get our first scenes of the Master's PowerPoint presentations on how to ruin a show with one episode. Seriously, even if these cutaways didn't ruin everything, they are so boring! I fucking hate these scenes so much. Like, just like Sacha's first appearance, they have that self-righteous bullshit tone going on as if they're thinking they are smart. Psst, psst, psst. Quick message. You are not fucking smart. This time round, it's in thinking that the audience won't think that this child is the Doctor, even though it's the most obvious twist in human fucking history. And when I was watching this, the whole time I was just begging, don't make this the Doctor, it can be fucking anyone but the Doctor. But of course, it wasn't.
There was an accident. A catastrophe.
Also, how does the regeneration look this fucking shit in 2020? I know I've said this before, but The End of Time came out over 10 years ago now, and it still has the best showcase of the regeneration effect. Meanwhile, the boring men go to team up with the Master. I talked about this in my Ascension review, how the Cybermen have just basically become generic villains at this point. And in this story, they are truly fucking pathetic. They are not threatening at all, they are just so fucking useless. Why are we here? Just to suffer. Seriously, this is fucking embarrassing. If you wanted to justify Ryan's flat, emotionless characters, you are not doing him any favours by making him scream around like a fucking idiot. And then after that cringe, we see 12 more Cybermen pop up and not a single one of them shoots Ryan. These villains have become an absolute joke. Now a poor man's Dalek doesn't even justify how far they've fallen, especially after World Enough in Time.
We shall have one goal. The destruction of all organic life.
How fucking boring! Remember when the Master laughing actually had some weight to it and it didn't just feel like it was there for a cringy, overbearing quirk? And then we see the child get tortured a bunch so that this bitch can get the regeneration. Can I just say, not once in this entire fucking episode do we get a mention of Rassilon or Omega. I'm not gonna act as if I'm like a Gallifrey lore expert, but Jesus fucking Christ! They could have been worked in so easily. You know how fucking amazing Omega could be with today's budget? And then after that bullshit we get the overly pretentious reveal that the Doctor is the timeless child. Fucking hell, this scene is awful. When 13 finds out she's the child, she looks like she couldn't give less of a shit. And this absolutely shits on the legacy of William Hartnell and the entire message of the show. The first Doctor had an arc where over time he mellowed and became less like a crotchety old man and became a nicer person. And over time in Classic Who, the more the Doctor travelled, the more he enjoyed it and the happier he became. Then we get to the Joy God 4. But now, this is absolutely fucking irrelevant because Hartnell isn't even the first Doctor, and we don't even know the Doctor's age. Also, I hate Name of the Doctor, but that story has just been completely shit on because we literally go into the Doctor's time stream. And notice how we see no incarnations before Hartnell. And this takes an absolute fucking wayside shit on the message of this show. That being that anyone can be special and is capable of good. The Doctor wasn't special. He was a renegade Time Lord who failed the Academy many times and skipped loads of classes. The Doctor left Gallifrey because he was scared and he disagreed with the Society. But now that message is fucking redundant. It's not that anyone can be special, because the Doctor was born special. She is an immortal god destined to do good. And she basically founded the fucking Time Lords. The impact of time in the Doctor now is fucking worthless. The impact of Tennant's regeneration is just fucking worthless. Why does he even need to be sad that he's going to his last life? He's regenerated millions of times. The Doctor was made special by what he did, not where he came from. It was the actions that made him special. I know that Moffat in the Smith era constantly made the Doctor feel like the most important person in the universe, but even he knew this was a mistake and he fixed it in Series 7. After another pathetic scene with the Cybermen, we get another shite scene between Cyberteeth and the poor man Sim. Wait. What the fuck did I just witness? So after 2 stories of build-up, a Jack Harkness cameo, Cyberteeth is just killed in the most anticlimactic way possible. You've got to be fucking kidding me. All the potentially interesting things from Cyberboy are ultimately pointless now, making him the worst Cyberman in history!
I thought if he was compressed, the death particle would activate.
Audience! I know that you're fucking stupid, so let me subtly tell you my thoughts and feelings! Fucking hell. Remember when this show had an ounce of subtlety? Like, if this master was in the end of time, when he saves the Doctor, he would be like, thanks for letting me live, even though I could have killed you, I'll save you now. And in that beautiful scene where we see that subtle bit of acting from John Sim, like, subtly begging the Doctor not to kill him, if that happened now, the Sacha Master would be like, please, Doctor, don't kill me. You mean so much to me, please don't kill me. It seems like such a distant memory when I actually enjoyed this show. Funny!
I'm not sure you can cope with much.
I have a right to know my own life.
I give up at this point. I'm giving up. Throughout the whole of this series, I've been saying Jodie Whittaker is a good actress, but she's given shit performances. I don't even know if I want to believe that anymore. Like, I've seen clips of her in other shows where she can act well. Like, what the fuck is this, Jodie? I've given her so many chances, like, just trying to be considerate of the 13th Doctor, but I give up. Jodie Whittaker, while no longer the worst Doctor, is the worst actor to play the role. And considering I insult Sasha on every single scene he's in, I think I should bring up the fact he was in An Adventure in Space and Time, a film that I actually really like. And while by no means does he give a fucking standout performance in that or anything, he's at least competent. Why are these semi-competent actors giving the worst performances I've seen in my life? Especially Sacha. And I know this is completely obvious and goes without saying, but I like both of these actors. From what little I've seen of them in interviews, they seem like lovely people. But it's incredibly hard to remain liking these people when they contribute to the worst thing you've seen in your fucking life. Like, the acting is so shit, it's not even like cringy over-the-top Classic Who acting that is usually fucking hilarious. It's just fucking awful. Whenever I see Sacha on screen, I can't even laugh at how shit his performance is. It just makes me feel sad. While in Classic Who the Master is probably one of the lamest recurring villains, In New Who, the Master was one of my favourite villains. He stayed consistently fucking fantastic throughout the whole revival. The Daleks didn't, the Cybermen didn't, the fucking Master did. Like, even though John Sim is character assassinated in The Doctor Falls, ignoring that one scene, he's still fucking brilliant and steals whatever scene he's in. But now, the Master is my least favourite villain. Ever. Roger Delgado, Anthony Ainley, Peter Pratt, Michelle Gomez and John Sim's brilliance cannot make up for how fucking abysmal Sacha is in this role. Oh, this episode actually makes me fucking depressed. Then, we find out that basically the Time Lords used the Doctor, then decided to not use the Doctor, so they wipe her mind and then somehow make the Doctor a child again. Don't worry, it's not explained. And this has basically just ruined the mystery of the Time Lords. They are so fucking lame now. Remember when they were like actually scary? They killed the second Doctor. They terrified the 10th Doctor and almost wiped out time in the End of Time. And it's revealed the Doctor left Gallifrey because he was scared. And now, they are just a bunch of fucking losers. Then the Master reveals his Time Lord Cybermen. These designs look fucking ridiculous. And this idea is fully out of a 12-year-old's fanfiction. Could you actually imagine Missy or Sim doing something this fucking stupid? Like, sure, Missy had the Cybermen as an army for the Doctor, and Sim manipulated Bill into becoming a Cyberman, but both these things actually had relevance and went somewhere. These Cybermasters do fuck all apart from become part of the background. My God! Is there actually anything decent in this episode?
The end of the universe itself!
You had one job. One fucking job. You pathetic excuse of a master. And you still get it wrong. You are beyond fucking useless. We all know how it's supposed to go. For the end of time itself! And then after all that bullshit, we cut back to the companions. I honestly forgot they were even here. They are so fucking irrelevant. And instead of having 3 characters to not give a shit about, there's fucking 7! Oh. And then we get an even bigger insult to this gaping wound of an injury, when my actual least favourite Doctor, Ruth, shows up and does absolutely fucking nothing. I'm not even going to pretend that I've ever liked this incarnation, because even in Fugitive, when I liked it, I never liked Jo Martin as the Doctor. I'm not going to try to deny that Jo Martin gives a good performance, but there's nothing about her Doctor other than the reveal, and that she exists. And I was hoping that this episode would give her some actual character. But no. She just shows up after Chris Chibnall takes a massive shit on this show, and then because he's a spineless twat, drags poor Jo Martin back, not to give her any character, but to basically say the last 47 minutes of your life that you wasted on this worthless piece of shit doesn't even matter. Fuck you! The Doctor bursting out of the Matrix is quite possibly one of the worst scenes in this show's history. It looks fucking terrible, and the incorporation of the main theme is a sin! One of my main issues among many other things of Classic Who is the music. Most of the time it's just serviceable, but other times it's downright appalling. But one thing I do commend Classic for is using the do-do-do in an interesting way that supports the theme of the Doctor being more mysterious. This is more shown at its best in the late 80s and when Tom Baker regenerates. However, in this scene, as if you'd think it couldn't get any worse, the music, as per usual, is fucking dreadful. I don't even think Murray Gold could have saved a scene as shit as this. Also, gotta love how they force in the brain of Morbius' face as if to say, look, the Doctor's always had unknown faces. In the brain of Morbius, these faces come directly from the Doctor's head. If the history was erased, then this wouldn't make sense.
All those memories. The Matrix. The memories blew the Matrix.
As if we didn't fucking get that anyway. Chibnall, stop treating the audience like fucking children! Also, how the fuck did the fam find their way to where the Doctor is? Have you seen Gallifrey? It's fucking enormous! So then the Doctor finds the cyber toys and connects with the Master, and it just won't end! Then the Cybermen ship just blows up for some reason. Then they all enter the TARDIS. So I don't buy that this weak embarrassment destroyed Gallifrey and killed all the Time Lords. But surely if he did, he would have destroyed the fucking TARDISes! That is so fucking stupid. I can't be fucked with this shit show anymore! Then the Doctor leaves her companions and I just don't care! And clearly nobody else does. The acting in this scene is fucking terrible.
Live great lives.
Don't fucking dare steal from the superior Northerner like that. Especially when this moment is infinitely worse in every possible aspect. Then we get the scene where the Doctor confronts the Master, and fuck me, this is just insulting. Instead of the Doctor actually doing the character work for once, she decides not to kill the Master for some reason. And then this old twat just shows up and does the character work for her. What the fuck is this horse shit?
I've got a few things to say to you. Basic stuff first. Never be cruel, never be cowardly.
LMFAO, no. Guess that just didn't fucking matter, did it? The Cybermasters don't even shoot him when he shows up. Like, how fucking useless are these pieces of shit? Just think. The Doctor lets someone kill themselves just to save her own ass. Fucking hell. Could you imagine if in the end of time, instead of the Doctor saving Wilf, he just gets that black dude from part 1 to go in the chamber and die instead of him doing it himself? Then, for some reason, the Judoon break into the TARDIS somehow, and the Doctor gets put in prison. And I just don't give a fuck. Poor man's tenant ending. So that was The Timeless Children, and do I even need to say anything? This is single-handedly the worst episode of Doctor Who ever made. The entire concept of Doctor Who as a show is now 100 times worse. The Doctor isn't a role model anymore because she's just a fucking god, destined to do good and save the universe. The last 13 years of developing the Master into a good person? Nah, irrelevant. Look at how hip and trendy our new diverse Master is. The companions, pfft, who cares? After they get sent home, they don't even give a shit. Rose who? The Ruth Doctor? Irrelevant. There might be hundreds, thousands, millions of other Doctors, but who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. None of it fucking matters. Who cares? I fucking care! Doctor Who has been my favourite TV show my entire life. It's always been there and it's always been at least enjoyable. Until the Chibnall takeover. While Series 11 is a boring piece of shit, it doesn't ruin canon. Because thankfully, Chib, being a self-righteous fucking arsehole, thought that he could do Doctor Who without the things that make it Doctor Who. But, because Series 11 was a monumental fucking failure, he started pandering to all the things we used to know and love. Subsequently, Series 12 ruins everything that came before, ruins the Master, ruins the Cybermen, ruins the Doctor, and ruins this entire fucking show! I honestly don't even know if I want to review Series 13 anymore. It's just been an absolute chore rewatching all these episodes. At least in shitty episodes before, there's stuff to laugh at, like The Twin Dilemma, Love and Monsters Fear Her, even Orphan 55. This episode does so much to this show and ruins it in so many ways. Yet, doesn't even have the balls to take it the whole way. It's not a surprise this show is fucking dead. Moffat's era is an incredibly mixed bag when it comes to Doctor Who, but he never made the entire show worse. His characters could always be fantastic. We've had 2 series with all these characters and I know next to nothing about them. I don't know anything about Yaz. I don't give a shit about Yaz. Yaz could fucking die next episode, I couldn't give a shit. Even when Mel left the show, I at least felt something. Donna and Martha established their characters in much less time and in much more effective ways. And while on my first viewing of this episode I was just hoping for Jack to show up, my god I'm glad he wasn't there, because despite this being a show-changing event, this episode is still filled with the generic filler Chibnall characters that add nothing. Every single scene, every single moment in this fucking abysmal piece of shit makes me want to die. This is the worst episode of Doctor Who. I wouldn't wish this upon my worst enemies. Chibnall, good luck with Series 13. Fuck you. I hope you retcon this. Actually, no. I was actually going to end the video. There is no more script left to read. I've decided. I'm going to do a comparison. 3 years with Chibnall as showrunner. 2018, 2019, 2020. And we're going to do the same thing for RTD. From 2005, 2006 and 2007. In 2 years as RTD showrunner, he introduced the 2 best Doctors, the best Daleks, the best Cybermen, and the best Master. In the exact same amount of time, Chibnall has introduced the 2 worst Doctors, the worst Dalek, the worst Cyberman, and fucking... Chibnall has fucking destroyed this show. It is being demolished. No one is left. I would never want to see Doctor Who fail, but I am glad. I am actually glad The Timeless Children is the least viewed episode in the revival. I'm not one of these people who think the show should be cancelled just because a fucking moron has ruined it, but it makes me happy knowing that Series 12, the finale baiting fanwag piece of fucking shit that's like, watch the finale, look Jack, watch the finale, look Master, watch the finale. I am glad that it fucking failed, and maybe finally the BBC will open their stupid fucking glued shut money hungry whore facing eyes and realise that this show is failing, and maybe they'll actually try to rectify it and start cracking down on Chibnall. Fuck the Timeless Children, fuck Chris Chibnall, fuck the BBC, and fuck the worst Master!
You can get excited now.
You missed me, right?
Finally, after a hiatus long enough to rival Classic Who's cancellation, I can confirm that not only am I back, finally reviewing the end of Series 12, but the reviews will be coming back every other Friday, 12 every fortnight. And if you see in this video, I can confirm that I've reviewed the rest of Series 8, Series 9, and Series 10. Unless, of course, you're seeing this in the Series 12 complete review, in which case, do not count on that. But before we get to any of that, it's time to finally finish what I started all that time ago. Reviewing every single episode of Series 12. It was one of the most painful experiences I've endured in my entire life, and it's safe to say that I had absolutely no hope for Revolution being anything good. I'd reached the point of being so done with Chibnall's piss-poor attempt at making Doctor Who, so much that all I really wanted was to see Jack being Jack again, because that's all anyone really wants, really. And I can safely say that this episode had actually left me surprised by its quality. It was even fucking worse than I could have possibly imagined. Let's just get in this shit heap.
Attendance has been low, and if I don't make it awesome, they may cancel it. I wonder if I'm gonna make it awesome.
Unfortunately, Chibnall doesn't have the talent or natural charisma of Leslie Knope, so he did not make it awesome. This disaster starts by reminding us of the events of Resolution, and thank you for that, Chibnall. Thank you for reminding me of the story that gets the Daleks fundamentally wrong and delivers the most unsatisfying special to face the Earth. Cheers, mate! We then see these 2 government workers, and Chibnall he attempts to make a character that we don't even know sympathetic. I wonder if this character's gonna die or something. Oh no.
Who would have seen that one coming? We are less than 3 minutes into this episode, and I've already remembered why I put off writing this script for almost 6 months. Like, just think about this scene for a second. What the actual fuck was the plan on this woman's behalf? How did she know he was even going to stop there? How did she know he was going to drink it immediately? What if he only drank a little bit? Or what if he just waited until he was in the middle of the motorway and then he drank it, and then he crashed the fucking truck? Was she gonna pack her entire shop up and follow him? And if she did that, how the fuck was she gonna take his body, hide it away subtly in the middle of a motorway? This entire plan is built on coincidence. It's so fucking stupid. Why am I even watching this shit? There's so many better things I could be doing right now, instead of wasting my time on this fucking trap. Oh yeah, that's why I'm still here. Not gonna lie, I do quite like the added colour into the title sequence, as it makes it look nicer than usual, and seeing Barrowman's name in the sequence after 13 years was immensely satisfying. And then my hopes were crushed again by seeing who wrote this. We are then introduced to the 3 other human characters who are going to be in this episode. Joe Patterson, who was built up in all the trailers but pretty much just dies and has no real significance. This dude Leo, who just exists to get possessed by the Daleks, and Jack fucking Robertson. What the fuck? Why is Jack Robertson here? Seriously, what the who asked for this character back? And why is he the only part of this episode I ironically enjoy? Seriously, he was so fucking terrible in Series 11 that seeing him again just kinda made all the scenes with him unintentionally funny. But also, this episode is starting to sound like Chibnall trope bingo already, because if these characters are majorly involved as well, then that would imply that this episode is trying to juggle the Doctor, God, Jack Robertson, Woman, Glasses, and Cardboard 1, 2, and 3. Wasn't I just complaining in the Timeless Children review about how Chibnall's stories try to juggle too many characters, and in the end we end up giving a shit about none of them? I cannot fucking wait to have most of them reduced to standing around in the background doing nothing! And this episode is already trying to do the same fucking thing. There's nothing about this that I don't hate, and I'm not even 5 minutes into the episode. And I can tell the quality of this story is going to be the equivalent of an overstuffed mess with a tiny little sprinkle on top. So far, it is looking better than most Chibnall episodes. Then we get another Chibnall trope bingo moment when the Glasses Man explains to us what the Dalek is doing when we can fucking see it right in front of us. Yes, this is actually really considerate, and I'm sure Jo appreciates it since she is blind and deaf. Oh, she isn't blind? And she isn't deaf? Then why the fuck are you explaining it?! Also, I like how it's stated by Leo— fuck, I said his name. I like how it's stated by Glasses earlier that he was the CEO of his own company and that he was acquired by this millionaire 18 months ago, yet when he shows off the Dalek, he shows it off in this little shithole. At least this little bit after establishes the relevance of the opening scene, and hey, it shows and implies some corrupt government stuff is going on. I can't wait to see this develop in an interesting way through the story. Oh. And then we get our first scene with the Doctor in prison, and this was the aspect of the story that I was actually most looking forward to. Besides him, obviously. Because the Doctor being locked in prison is a really interesting concept for storytelling, and hell, you could base an entire episode just in this location. And the trailer made it out as if this episode is going to be mostly Doctorless, and that could work in its favour as it could finally add more onto the companions. Well, I say more. And maybe we could see if they actually, well, you know, have characters. And we could see how prison life is changing the Doctor, and she could have an entire inner conflict sort of like in Heaven Sent, and this could finally give Jodie the chance to show off some great acting capabilities and range. So she spends the first scene walking around miserably and— oh my god, I remember that! Look, it's things! I remember things! I like things I remember! And then we cut away to the companions. Oh. Don't worry, I'm sure they'll do more interesting things with this later in the episode. Speaking of the scenes with the companions, it's fucking terrible, and the suspension of disbelief in this scene is completely dropped. Because of this out-of-nowhere obsession that Yaz has with the Doctor, it's stupid, it's illogical, and it makes no sense. So, this scene is implying that after the Doctor sent home the companions and it seemed like none of them gave a fuck, Yaz actually did give a fuck, and has been obsessing for 10 months on trying to get the Doctor back. But this just doesn't work. Whenever have Yaz and the Doctor been shown to have an obsessive relationship, like 10 and Rose or 12 and Clara? And it's not like we get shown any scenes instantly after she got back, like how this was affecting her, with like how they did in Rose in Series 1. Ryan and Graham are right in saying that they should move on with their lives, and any fucking normal person would. From their point of view, the Doctor said she was going to do something that would kill her, and then disappeared without a trace, and there's been no sign of her for 10 months. Any rational person would assume that she died. And has Yaz not been back to see her family and go to work? She is a police officer who strives to do bigger and better things. Why didn't she go and use her new experiences to help her on the job in the Doctor's armor or something? Anything but this! This just feels like a botched version of Billy Butcher's motivations in The Boys. And skip to this time code if you haven't seen The Boys, because seriously, it is excellent, you should see it. So it's slowly revealed through the first season of The Boys that the reason Billy hates superheroes and wants to take them down is because Homelander raped his wife, and after she was seen in a park crying, has been missing for 8 years and her body was never found. Despite the fact that she's presumed dead, and Billy is obsessed with trying to find her, see if she's alive, and in season 2, he does know that she's alive, and obsesses to try and find her, letting it consume his life. However, this is much more believable with Butcher, because we've had 2 seasons setting this up, and the few scenes we've seen him in with his wife, you believe their connection, and why Billy would go to such extreme lengths to do this, and why he would let this consume his life. But here, it doesn't work because of how poorly the Doctor and companion relationship has been set up over the last 2 seasons. Since both characters are so poorly defined, this connection and Yaz's obsession is unbelievable, making the suspension of disbelief fall out the fucking window. Fuck! The scene where Robertson and the companions meet might have actually finally made me realize why I like him.
Remember us? Take the car. Just leave my face.
He's so bad and cheesy and just straight up over the top that I actually end up kind of loving him. And to be honest, he might be the only bad thing in this era that I can actually enjoy. So, you know what? I'll take it.
Oh no, not you guys.
He's also my spirit animal, as I share the exact same sentiment about these planks. Seriously, do none of you fucking twats have brains? All 3 of them say that they saw him with a Dalek, and he clearly doesn't know what they mean, yet not a single one of these fucking delinquent morons decides to describe it to him. They just keep saying its name. This is the equivalent of describing what colours look like to a person who's always been blind! Then we get another scene with the Doctor in prison with more nostalgia pandering bullshit. Wait, never mind, there's nothing there. Oh, and Jack's back. Yeah, they really underplay this scene, which is a surprise considering how big of a deal they made of it before. Meeting the companions.
You missed me, right?
Meeting the Doctor.
Remember this?
Seriously, even when I add in Jack's theme to make the scene more bearable than Akinola's usual talentless shite music, the scene just isn't impactful. Oh, and I might as well just add it in here. The music hasn't improved whatsoever. It is an absolute fucking earsore the entire time. Akinola has not improved. His music making capabilities are trash, and this episode made me wish I was fucking deaf. Also, Jack just has this escape device. But like, how?
Have you had work done?
You can talk.
Oh, I remember that!
Hello? Have you had work done? You can talk.
Seriously, the amount of nostalgia pandering bullshit that they do it in this episode is fucking insane and beyond lazy writing. We've gone from straight up stealing RTD's ideas and attempting to replicate his characters to just redoing moments from before and making them less funny. I think the biggest testament to how abysmal the directing is in this era is that you can have the same actor delivering pretty much the exact same lines, but under the shit direction the line is so much worse and so much less comedic because of the lack of different inflections.
How did you manage to smuggle that in here?
You really want me to answer that?
But that's a compact laser deluxe. Where were you hiding that?
You really don't want to know.
Give me that accessory.
The contrivances continue as we hear that Jack heard a rumour that the Doctor was in prison. From who? Like, seriously, this could have been such an easy fix. Just have it so that at the beginning of the episode where Jack finds the companions, or vice versa, and then they tell him that the Doctor is in prison so he can go and break in and free her. This insane level of stupidity and contrivance is then somehow topped when it's showing that Glasses found little bits of Dalek in the casing and grew one of his own! Are you fucking kidding me?! I'm going to assume that my audience is intelligent enough to understand how fucking stupid this is, so I'm just going to say, what absolute convenience that Glasses can not only fully rebuild and reprogram the Dalek, but he's also extremely clever as a biologist, yet he's seemingly still the only person who works for this company. Brilliant. Just brilliant writing. Then they bring back one of the worst things from Resolution, that Daleks out of their casing being able to possess people, which is just completely contradictory to why they have their casing in the fucking first place! Chibnall, you do realise that the point of the Daleks is that they are mutants. They are supposed to be fucking useless without the casing, but nah! They're still hyper useful and capable of amazing things. It's like how being a Force ghost in Star Wars went from you were dead, but you could have guidance, to you are dead, you can still use the Force, and you have new Force abilities. And it reaches the point of stupidity in the new Star Wars films that it's pretty much just better being dead than alive. So the Doctor and Jack teleport into the TARDIS somehow, and I might as well just get it out the way now, so a fair bit of warning. Compared to the other reviews, my audio is recorded in a much different way than before, so prepare your ears. Holy fucking shit, Jack is so good in this episode! He steals this show in whatever scene he's in! Barrowman is still sexy to this day! And my God! He's one of the few people on the show who can fucking act! But, unfortunately, like in Fugitive, I honestly fail to see the point of having Jack in this episode, outside of just fan service and keeping the viewers interested. Like, don't get me wrong, he's still the best part of this episode and series, just like how he was before, but there was no real point of keeping him here. If Jack wasn't in this episode, it could play out pretty much exactly the same outside of breaking the Doctor out of prison. All he really does is do what the old monsters in the prison did, and it's pretty much just, I remember that! I like that I remember that! Which, overall, just isn't a good use of Jack. But at least sometimes in this episode, they actually remember why Jack was such an important part of this show, and why he should be constantly integral. I doubt he'll appear in Series 13 now because of his over-the-top cancellation, but this episode gives us some great Jack moments throughout. You just have to dig through a lot of pandering to try and find it. Also in this scene, it sets up for later that the Doctor still isn't sure about the whole timeless children aspect of her life, and oh my god, I'll get on that ramble later, because trust me, it's just as shitty as it was before. When the Doctor and the fam reunite, don't worry, I will never let that meme die. We get more of Yaz's classic unlikability, when she shoves the Doctor for being gone for 10 months. Like, seriously, she completely glosses over the fact that the Doctor just said that she was in jail, just to complain. How do you think she feels? It's been at least 20 years for her. Something that makes this reaction come off as even more unlikable is that Jack had a much more realistic and tame reaction when he was dished to die for pretty much over 200 years. Jack, after waiting almost 200 years, give or take.
I've been following you for a long time. You abandoned me.
Did I? Busy life, moving on.
Yaz, after waiting 10 months.
We were worried about you.
I thought you died. I waited for you, you didn't come back, and I thought you must have died.
After a completely underplayed reaction to hearing about the Daleks, don't worry, I'm not going to rant about how they have a lack of impact, because the Daleks have been a joke since 2010 at this point. The Daleks have been a joke for a longer time than Jack was out of Doctor Who. Then we are suddenly in Japan, and believe it or not, we get even more stupidity to top the fact that the Daleks were fucking growing. Apparently, this one Dalek in London built this massive thing in Japan with hundreds of other Daleks in this building that he hired out. What?! I mean, they explain this later, but the explanation, once more, almost as if it's a fucking pan with this episode, was so contrived and so convenient that it just comes off as bullshit. And, well, in as simple a way as putting it as possible, fuck off. So the fam split up, and they actually do take advantage of this time around. First off, we see Robertson's 3D printed Dalek cases, and the second you see the red flashing light inside it, you just think to yourself, okay, so they've talked about how there's nothing inside these in the least subtle way imaginable, and there's a remote signal unit inside. I can sense that some bullshit is about to go down, and surely enough, later on, some absolutely contrived bullshit goes on. Who wrote this shit? The next scene is nowhere near as bad as the rest of the episode, and honestly, I know I was saying before Jack's inclusion was mostly pointless, but this scene with Jack is honestly better for characterizing Yaz than, well, literally anything that we've seen before. And it's funny, because this still isn't even really character for Yaz. It's just reflecting Jack's already well-established great backstory onto another character, who has gone through something slightly similar, while nowhere near as interesting. And honestly, Yaz trying to explain how unfair it is from her situation just gives off the vibe that they were trying to replicate that scene from School Reunion, while fundamentally misunderstanding why that scene was great in the first place. Yaz is acting like the poor victim in the situation of the Doctor leaving her, but once again, the Doctor literally said she had to kill herself to stop the Master, and she would do it in a heartbeat to save the fam! There is no comparison between that and the Doctor pretty much just leaving Sarah Jane on the wrong street for almost 30 years. Sarah Jane has a completely justified reaction while being rational to being left, while Yaz, who was left for a significantly less amount of time, has an unjustified reaction to this. Bearing in mind that Sarah travelled with the Doctor for longer as well, keep in mind. While I can at least appreciate this scene at least trying to characterise Yaz, fucking finally, like with the Doctor herself, it's just taking elements from other established things that work and cramming them together while fundamentally misunderstanding why they work in the first place. This episode is a fucking mess and I regret deciding to review it.
The only thing I will be waving is your decapitated head on a stick in front of your weeping mother.
Good lord.
As hard as it is for you to understand, this isn't about you.
Then why the fuck did you bring him along?
Aggression. Daleks are insidious, relentless, and clever.
I want you to keep this in mind for later. Remember what the Doctor just described the Daleks as. You got that? Good. By the way, did I mention we're only halfway through this piece of shit and I've almost said as much about this episode as The Timeless Children? The worst episode of Doctor Who ever. Then after a pointless action scene and some new shots showing where the Daleks are...
To billions of people, Dalek means hate.
No monuments.
I hate this show. We then get one of the absolute worst, quote-unquote, character scenes in this episode, and fuck me, this just marks the point of no return. On Ryan's half, he says through gritted teeth, it's fine. It's not good, it's not bad, but it does that classic Chibnall trope of telling us the interesting stuff instead of showing us this stuff. But it's obvious that these lines were only included so that we can show and justify Ryan leaving at the end of the series. Something that they actually did show potential of making a good arc in Can You Hear Me, but they just fucking fail at. So the moment at the end just fails. But more on that later. So you know how in The Timeless Children, after Chibnall completely destroyed the character of the Doctor, he pussied out of it and basically just said, doesn't even matter lol? which just undermined the entire story, making it feel completely pointless in the long run. Well, for some bizarre reason, he's decided that he'd fucking do it again, and to add on to the points I said in that review, unsurprisingly, this shit still doesn't work because of how surface level it is. Now you, faithful viewer, knows why this stupid timeless children horseshit doesn't work, because it ruins the fundamentals of the Doctor as a character by making them inherently special when they are meant to be the complete opposite. But Chibnall, who has about as much self-awareness as 13 does fashion sense, doesn't actually know why the Doctor should be distraught from this, because all we really get from her is, I don't know where I come from. No, that's it! That is literally it! It has about as much fucking depth as a teaspoon! This is the equivalent of me finding out I wasn't born where I thought I was born. So I was actually born in this hospital here, but I thought I was born in this hospital here. How does this affect the character in any way? Fuck this show!
Chris, you have come up with a plan so spectacularly horrible that it might ruin the entire department.
That entire conversation was fucking awful, my god! Alright, I'm gonna be honest here. I started initially writing this review way back because I just gave up on it and I couldn't be bothered watching another shitty Chibnall script. And now I'm sitting here almost a full year later since I finished reviewing Series 12 originally, and nothing has changed whatsoever. Absolute, undefendable, unbridled, unscathed trash!
Did you really have to bring him?
Yes.
I like how the Doctor doesn't even have an answer for this because there's actually no logical reason for him to come along in the TARDIS. Chibnall just needed it to happen so that they could force the character into the final act of the story. Brilliant. Then we get a whole bunch of exposition and then the Daleks teleport into the Entry 3D Daleks cases. Because of course they do. Fuck off, show. So then we got a bunch of holy shit, is that a red Dalek?!
This is just... Oh my... Yes, the red!
I'm actually getting like full-on second-hand embarrassment here. Like, he's so giddy and excited seeing Daleks shoot the ground. Like, come on.
The Daleks are red!
They're red!
They're red!
They're red! Oh my god, bro. We've never seen it.
Look at how you paused it. Oh my god.
So then we get a bunch of shots of the red Daleks killing people. The Doctor then repeats the same arc as in the episode previous, tries to rip off one of Capaldi's best moments.
I'm the Doctor. I'm the one who stops the Daleks.
You are monsters! That is the role you seem determined to play, so it seems that I must play mine. The man that stops the monsters.
And then devises the single worst plan I have seen in this entire fucking show. To stop the Earth currently being taken over by Daleks, the Doctor decides to bring even fucking more Daleks to Earth. The fact that I'm not even fucking with you just says it all about how fucking stupid this episode is. The Doctor, yes, the Doctor, risks the entire planet by invading it with even more Daleks on purpose, and her only defense for this is saying that they are not after humans. Well, that logic is fucking broken because clearly they're still willing to kill them, you stupid bitch!
Oh, wait! I come in peace.
I'll say it once again. Who fucking wrote this? So the Doctor, while trying to be sneaky because...
But they don't know that I'm behind the transmission, and it's quite important that they don't realise I'm here.
Decides to park the TARDIS here, where all of the fucking Daleks are flying past, yet not a single one of them sees her. This is fucking abysmal! The only interesting scene, deeply buried in this pile of stupid, contrived, nonsensical bullshit, is that Jack Robertson being sleazy with the Daleks, manipulating his way around them, surviving, and selling out the human race. That was genuinely interesting, and it was actually well performed part of the episode. Shame they do so fucking little with it, but at this point, I'm not even fucking surprised. We then see Jack, Ryan and Graham spreading around these bombs that Jack conveniently has with no explanation, and the three explore the ship. The scene with Ryan and Graham is standard cringe, but the scenes with Jack are actually alright, because of Barrowman's great performance and his experience on the show, and Jack's experience as a character is seeping through the cracks of this shit episode.
I won't disappear again. Yeah, you will.
Fuck off, Plank. And then we get one of, if not the worst resolution that this show has ever seen, and I'm not even over-exaggerating, this is next level moronic. So the Doctor uses the old TARDIS that she had sent the fam back. Sorry, let me redo that. So the Doctor uses the old TARDIS that she sent the fam back in, and uses a hologram of herself to lure the Daleks in, then destroys the TARDIS. If you don't see the inherent, glaring flaws in this bullshit, let me spell it out. This isn't just a few Daleks that went in this TARDIS, by the way. No. Every single one of them, yes, every single one of them went in here. And surely there's not that many, right? Nope. Nope! There's fucking loads of them. And not a single one of them stayed outside the TARDIS! You have got to be fucking kidding me! Also, another full fucked moral moment for 13, destroying a living, sentient being without questioning whether it's morally or ethically fucked. What do I even expect at this point? And let's just get that obvious, most obvious thing that you're all probably fucking thinking right now if you're using your brain. If you were going to use the TARDIS to destroy the Daleks, then why did you not just do that in the fucking first place, you stupid, smelly bitch? So Jack blows up the ship, the Doctor destroys the TARDIS, and that's the entire Dalek plot over. What absolute, contrived, nonsense, illogical, fucking ridiculously stupid, excessively irritating bag of shit nonsense. As I said in my Torchwood Series 1 ranking, this episode is just living proof that Chibnall hasn't changed. He was a shit writer back then, and he's an even worse one now. But that's not all. There's still one undeserved scene before this fucking nightmare is over. To add an additional insult to this episode, we don't even get a proper goodbye scene for Jack. We just get some extremely obvious ADR, and more fan wank by mentioning Gwen just because. Just fucking end already. Ryan's exit is complete unearned horseshit, and I can't believe people are actually praising this scene as one of the best in the era. The cunt literally says my planet needs me, with no sense of irony. How on earth could someone write this? As I said before, this exit was almost set up in an interesting way, but they literally have one scene in episode 7, I think, and then they don't mention it for the rest of the series, and then this episode just acts as if this was always the plan. Yeah, fuck you. This is one of, if not the most unearned companion exit of all time. Like, at least Graham's makes more sense, but Ryan's, fucking hell, it's just such, I'll say it again, contrived bullshit! Spyfall is one of the most unearned moments this show has ever attempted to pull off, and the fact that the Doctor gives the two people psychic paper without thinking about the immense, irreversible consequences this could have just highlights why 13 is the worst Doctor. In conclusion, fuck this show! So, that was Revolution of the Daleks, and I'm not just saying this for the video, but this was not only so much worse than I remember it being, this is one of the single worst Doctor Who episodes I've seen in my life. The fact that I am genuinely thinking that an episode with Captain Jack Harkness can be as bad as Spyfall, Orphan 55, Praxeus, Ascension of the Cybermen, and even The Timeless Children says a lot about how much of a botched piece of shit that this absolute dumpster fire of a script was. There is so many contrived, convenient, stupid, unearned, illogical, bullshit scenes in this episode, I cannot believe more people aren't complaining about how fucking shit this episode is. I mean, let's just face facts here. That literally the only defense that fans of this episode have is, quote unquote, it's fun. Which, while I can understand that, an episode can be fun, and it's fine to see anything as fun, something being fun doesn't mean that it's well written.
It's fun. It's just fun. It's fun. It's fun. It is fun.
I think Return of Dr. Mysterio is a fun episode. By all means, that doesn't make it good. That episode fucking sucks. But this episode spends most of its runtime trying to steal established ideas and moments from much better characters while completely fucking them up in the process, not understanding why they worked, just taking the superficial elements. While both Jacks are actually pretty good in this episode, ignoring the fact that 60% of Harkness's lines are either exposition or fan wank, he's still great. However, the Doctor is fucking awful in this story. Her plan is completely retarded. The repeating of the already shit arc from the Timeless Children was a waste of time. Yaz is fucking terrible. They are trying to take her character in a direction that doesn't work on its own because it doesn't make sense within this own story, and then you look at the stuff from the past and realize that it's even worse than you originally thought. Ryan's character arc is shoved down the viewer's face in a terrible, unsubtle way, even though it doesn't make sense because the setup is minimal in the first place. Graham does pretty much nothing of importance the whole time, except leave and have that cringy scene at the end. And that brings us to the plot. Good fucking God! What the fuck is happening during any of this awful episode? Seriously, it's a fucking mess the entire way through this episode. It will actively contradict itself within the span of a couple minutes. The episode spends the entire time building up to something that resolved way too easily in a completely unsatisfying way. Oh yeah, and did you remember that the Doctor was in prison? Because I fucking didn't. One interesting idea and concept dropped in such a boring way, making it feel entirely superfluous. This is not only this is not only the worst special of all time, not only one of the worst episodes of all time, but it's an all-around fucking disgrace to the shell of what is left of Doctor Who. Chibnall's treatment of Doctor Who over the last 3 years has been an absolute sickening fucking joke to watch it unravel over the last 3 years. It's just been shit after shit after shit, and after reviewing this episode, I've completely lost all hope for Series 13, and I'm just gonna say it now, I might not even bother reviewing it, to be honest. I don't want to waste what little spare time I have in my life on this Chibnall-era dribble anymore. While this episode isn't as bad as The Timeless Children, the fact that there's more to talk about how fundamentally broken this trash is, and the fact that it has pissed me off this much, says it all. Fuck this show! And with that, that's me done with Chibnall-era Doctor Who, at least for a very long time. And can I just say, while rewatching every episode was absolute fucking pain and suffering, I have loved editing and making these videos, and I'm glad that so many of you like the reviews, and excuse me, if you want more of them, I will be doing Capaldi era reviews on the TARDIS team channel. But for now, fuck's sake, but for now, that's all from me. Chibnall, thank you for killing my passion for Doctor Who completely, but at least one thing your colossal failure and disgrace to this show has proved to me is that I have a newfound respect and appreciation for everything that came before. Moffat, while being a terrible showrunner, never did anything as terrible and detrimental to the entire show as you did, and you have given me an entire newfound level of respect for him. I didn't think my respect for Russell could go any higher, but fucking hell, after seeing his genius ideas botched the way you fuck them, I have even more respect for the best writer of this whole show. In conclusion, Series 12 is an abomination. Fuck Chibnall. Fuck the Satcher Master. Fuck the 13th Doctor. Fuck Ryan. Fuck Yaz. I like Jack Robertson. Fuck Graham pretty much as well. I like Jack. But he's 90% fan wank. Goodbye. I don't even know what to say anymore. Just, holy shit, what an adventure.
And how do you feel about that?
Mostly angry.